There is something about the Fallout universe that makes you want to linger. Not rush, not speedrun, just wander. The Geiger counter clicking softly in the background, a scratchy pre-war song drifting from your Pip-Boy, the late afternoon light catching the dust motes floating above a collapsed overpass. You were supposed to go north 30 minutes ago, but then you saw a glowing campfire off in the distance, or a mailbox with a note stuffed inside it, or a door half buried under rubble with a terminal you could hack if your science skill was just high enough. And before you knew it, another hour slipped away. That is what this is about. Not the main quest. Not the big dramatic moments where the fate of the world hangs in the balance. This is about the other stuff. The quiet stuff. The quests that 200 hours in, you still somehow never finished. The ones with endings that surprised you, characters that stayed with you, lore drops that made you sit back and just breathe for a second. We are going through 150 of them. 150 side quests scattered across the entire Fallout series, from the original isometric classics all the way through the modern games, including the DLCs that most players skip entirely. Some of these are marked in your Pip-Boy with a proper quest title. Many of them are unmarked, the kind that activate silently when you walk into the right building or say the right thing to a stranger on the road. All of them are worth your time, so get comfortable. This is the kind of video you leave on in the background while you drift off, or the kind you watch while you are playing, letting the stories wash over you like the static from a distant radio signal. There is no rush here. The wasteland will wait. Section 1. The first dozen hours don't tell you everything. Let us start somewhere almost everyone misses, and I mean misses on the first playthrough, the second, sometimes even the third. Because the thing about Fallout is that it trains you to follow the compass arrow. You take the main quest, you follow the yellow marker, and you end up missing entire towns, entire human stories, entire tragedies that were sitting right there the whole time, 3 minutes off the beaten path. Quest 1, Jig's Treasure Hunt, Fallout 3. You are walking through the Museum of Technology in Washington, D.C., probably on your way to retrieve a Virgo satellite dish for a quest you half remember. You find a terminal. It asks you a question about prime numbers. You might just walk past it. But if you stop, if you answer correctly and follow the trail of 4 terminals scattered through the museum, each one giving you a clue, you end up in the planetarium office with a weapons cache and access to a stash that includes the Xuanlong assault rifle, one of the best unique weapons in the entire game. The quest has no official marker. It is just there, a little scavenger hunt built into the ruins of a science museum 2 centuries after the bombs fell. Someone, presumably a wanderer named Jig long before you, left those terminals running, left that trail. You are following a ghost's breadcrumbs through a dead museum, and the whole thing takes maybe 20 minutes. And yet most players walk right past the first terminal and never know it existed. Quest 2, The Wasteland Survival Guide, Fallout 3. Moira Brown at Craterside Supply in Megaton is one of those characters that some players find annoying and others find absolutely charming. She wants to write a survival guide for Wastelanders, and she needs your help doing research. This quest sends you into a minefield, into a grocery store crawling with ghouls, into a radiation zone, and eventually into a Mirelurk-infested metro. It sounds like a simple fetch and test quest on the surface, and in some ways it is. But what makes it special is the way Moira responds to your choices. You can deliberately fail sections, give her terrible data on purpose, get yourself crippled in the field, and the guide she eventually publishes reflects all of it. The actual physical book exists in the game world, and depending on how you handled her tasks, it ranges from genuinely useful to hilariously useless. There is a version of the Wasteland Survival Guide, where the chapter on radiation exposure essentially tells readers to just, quote, try not to get too much of it. That is the result of a player who deliberately stood in a rad storm to give Moira what she asked for. The quest is funny, touching, and replayable in a way that most side quests simply are not. Quest 3, Tenpenny Tower, Fallout 3. On the surface, this looks like a simple quest about a ghoul trying to get into a fancy high-rise. Roy Phillips, a feral-looking ghoul, wants to live in Tenpenny Tower, a pre-war luxury hotel still occupied by well-dressed human survivors. Alistair Tenpenny, the eccentric British billionaire who runs the place, does not want ghouls anywhere near his establishment. You are stuck in the middle. You can side with Tenpenny, help him drive the ghouls away, and collect your reward. You can negotiate a peaceful arrangement and let the ghouls move in, which requires convincing the human residents to accept them. Or you can help Roy and his crew find the secret tunnel entrance beneath the tower and let them take over by force. Here is the part that nobody talks about. If you choose the peaceful resolution, if you work hard to broker harmony between the humans and the ghouls, if you feel genuinely good about what you have accomplished, come back a few weeks of in-game time later. Walk back into Tenpenny Tower. All the human residents are dead. Roy Phillips killed them all anyway. Every single one. The ghouls are living there now, and Roy is in Tenpenny's penthouse. Your carefully negotiated peace meant nothing. The quest does not tell you this will happen. The game does not warn you. You find out the same way you find out most terrible things in the wasteland, by walking in and seeing it. Quest 4, Oasis, Fallout 3. Up in the far northern reaches of the capital wasteland, there is a grove, actual green trees, living plants, a waterfall. In a world of gray dust and collapsed concrete, Oasis feels surreal, like stepping through a door into somewhere else entirely. At the center of it is Harold, a character some players may remember from the original Fallout games. Harold is a man who was exposed to the forced evolutionary virus, and over the decades since, a tree has grown from his head. Not a small tree either, a full-size tree rooted through Harold's body, with branches spreading above him. Harold cannot move. Harold has been there for years, maybe decades, and Harold is in agony. The followers who worship him, who built their hidden settlement around his grove, believe he is a blessing. They think the tree, Bob, as Harold calls it, represents new life, the beginning of a green world rising from the ashes of the old one. Harold does not see it that way. Harold wants to die. He asks you, quietly, desperately, to help him. The quest gives you several choices. You can burn his heart deep in the cave system beneath the grove, killing him. You can accelerate Bob's growth so that Harold's influence spreads across the wasteland whether he wants it to or not. You can seal Harold's fate with chemicals that keep him in stasis forever, trapped but stable. None of the choices feel good, because Harold is genuinely suffering, and the people who love what he represents would be devastated by losing him. This is one of the most morally complicated quests in all of Fallout 3, hidden in the woods at the edge of the map where maybe a third of players ever wander. Quest 5. Andale's Secret, Fallout 3. The unmarked quest known by players as Our Little Secret begins when an old man named Harris waves you down on the road near a small, pleasant-looking suburb called Andale. Something is wrong with the neighbors, he says. Something he cannot quite bring himself to name. If you follow his warning and start talking to the residents of Andale, something feels off immediately. Everyone is cheerful in a strained way. The kids play outside. The adults speak about community and togetherness. There are no visitors. The food on the table includes cuts of meat that do not come from any animal you recognize. You can poke around, find notes and journals hidden around the houses, put together what has been happening in Andale. The residents are cannibals. They have been killing travelers, processing them, and feeding their children on human meat for years. The children do not know. Harris, the old man who warned you, is the only one who has refused to participate. When you confront the adults, they attack. The children watch. You can investigate, expose, confront, and deal with the situation however your conscience allows, and Harris will thank you quietly afterward. It is not a long quest. There is no dramatic music sting, but it sits with you in a way that longer quests sometimes do not. Quest 6, Those, Fallout 3. Brian Wilkes is a child you find wandering outside his ruined hometown of Greyditch. His father is missing. The town has been overrun by giant fire ants that have been mutated far beyond their usual size. When you go into Greyditch to find the source of the infestation, you find a scientist's notes, a tragic story of experimentation gone wrong, and fire ant soldiers that can set the ground itself ablaze. Completing the quest means clearing the infestation and deciding what to do with Brian, who has no surviving family. You can place him with an adoptive family, send him to an orphanage in the city, or in a truly grim option, sell him to a slaver. The quest itself is reasonably fun combat with some decent lore baked in, but the thing that makes it memorable is that little boy standing in the road, alone, asking if you can help. The wasteland is full of orphans, but Brian Wilkes has a face and a voice and a quest entry in your Pip-Boy. Quest 7. Head of State, Fallout 3. Hannibal Hamlin, yes, that name is intentional, runs an underground railroad for escaped slaves in the capital wasteland. He wants to reclaim the Lincoln Memorial, currently held by the Talon Company mercenaries who have turned it into a staging ground. At the same time, you can find Abraham Washington at Rivet City, a historian obsessed with collecting Lincoln memorabilia scattered across the museum ruins nearby. These two storylines weave together beautifully. You can collect Lincoln's hat, his diary, his coin collection, the wanted poster for John Wilkes Booth, and sell them to either Hannibal or Abraham, getting very different reactions from each. Liberating the memorial for the slaves is a meaningful earned moment that the game does not oversell. The reward is not enormous, but walking into that memorial and seeing it reclaimed, the inscription clean and visible again, means something. It means something in a way that makes the quest linger. Quest 8. The Superhuman Gambit. Fallout 3. Canterbury Commons is a small trading hub on the eastern edge of the map, and it has a problem. Two costumed lunatics, a man who calls himself the Antagonizer who controls swarms of giant ants, and a man who calls himself the Mechanist who commands armies of robots, are engaged in an ongoing territorial war. The townsfolk are caught in the middle. This quest has a genuinely funny premise, and then it gradually reveals genuine sadness underneath. Both supervillains, if you can call them that, are just people. Scared, lonely people who retreated into personas because the wasteland was too much for them to handle. You can defeat one and recruit the other as a protector for Canterbury Commons. You can kill both. You can reason with either of them if you have the right skills, and each has a confession to make when cornered. The Mechanist is a mechanic who found a costume in a box and decided it made him feel powerful. The Antagonizer is a woman who lost her family and decided controlling something, anything, made the grief bearable. Nobody in Canterbury Commons knows any of this. They just see the costumes. Quest 9. The Replicated Man. Fallout 3. This quest begins innocuously enough. A scientist in Rivet City's marketplace asks you to find someone. Specifically, they are looking for a runaway android, a synthetic human so convincingly built that they have blended into wasteland society completely. The android does not know they are an android. They have false memories. They believe they are a normal human being with a normal past. Finding them requires interviewing dozens of NPCs across the capital wasteland, gathering holotapes, following rumors, and piecing together an identity like a mosaic. When you find the android, they react with genuine horror to what you have told them. What you choose to do next, turn them into the scientist who built them, help them escape, or simply let them disappear, defines what kind of person you are in this world. The quest also quietly introduces the concept of synthetic humans to the Fallout universe, planting a thematic seed that Fallout 4 would grow into an entire storyline years later. Quest 10. Stealing Independence. Fallout 3. Abraham Washington wants the Declaration of Independence. He wants the actual document, not a replica, retrieved from the National Archives across the Potomac. What he does not tell you up front is that the National Archives are defended by a uniquely frustrating faction of robots and an extremely paranoid security system. The centerpiece of the quest is Button Gwinnett, an android that was programmed to believe it is actually Button Gwinnett, one of the signers of the Declaration. This android takes its role very, very seriously. It will test you to see if you are a true patriot. It will demand you prove your American credentials. And if you have a speech skill high enough, you can convince a robot that it is, in fact, free and does not need to guard this document forever. Watching an 18th century cosplay robot have a quiet existential revelation is not something you expect from a quest about retrieving old paper, but here we are. Quest 11. The Pit. Into the Pit. Fallout 3 DLC. We will come back to the Pit DLC in more detail later, but this quest deserves a mention early because it fundamentally changes how you see the wasteland. The Pit is Pittsburgh, industrial, toxic, run by a warlord named Asher who keeps a workforce of slaves processing steel under conditions that slowly kill them. The slave rebellion brewing beneath his feet is led by a man named Werner who recruited you to help. When you arrive, you are stripped of all your equipment and thrown into the slave pits. Starting from nothing in a hostile environment is one of the most disorienting experiences Fallout 3 offers. And the moral question at the heart of the pit, whether order imposed through brutality is better than the violent chaos outside its walls, is one the game actually refuses to answer for you. Quest 12. Vault 87 and the Garden of Eden Creation Kit. Fallout 3. Most players find Vault 87 through the main story, but the vault itself contains several unmarked encounters and secrets that are easy to walk right past when you are focused on your objectives. The FEV mutation chambers are still active. Notes from the researchers explain what happened to the vault's residents, how the experiment went wrong, how the early super mutants were created in this very place, confused and violent and increasingly beyond the control of anyone who had made them. The Garden of Eden Creation Kit. The GECK, the device your father died trying to reach, is a small metal briefcase. When you finally hold it, the weight of the main story and a dozen side stories press down on you. This vault is the origin of the super mutant threat blighting the wasteland, and you walked through it looking for a box. Quest 13. Big Town and the Rescue, Fallout 3. Big Town is a settlement of young adults who escaped Little Lamplight, the children's colony in the caverns. When you turn 16 in Little Lamplight, you are sent out, and most of them end up here. The problem is that Big Town is constantly raided by super mutants and slavers. The residents are scared and underprepared. If you help them, there are multiple ways to do it. You can simply fight off the raiders for them. You can teach them combat skills. You can repair their robot protector time bomb. One of the residents, a woman named Red, has been kidnapped by slavers and is being held in a super mutant camp. Rescuing her is optional. The quest has no real reward beyond a small amount of caps and the quiet satisfaction of watching a group of frightened young people learn to stand their ground. Quest 14. The Superhuman Gambit continues, the Antagonizer's story. If you go back to the Antagonizer after defeating the Mechanist, she is still in her tunnels. She can be talked down. She will admit quietly that she has no reason to keep fighting, that the war with the Mechanist was the only thing giving her life structure after her family was killed. She will ask what the point of any of it is. There is no good answer. The game does not give you one. She wanders off into the wasteland, costume and all, and Big Town is a little safer. Nobody in Canterbury Commons ever knows her real name. Quest 15. The Republic of Dave, Fallout 3. Up in the northeast corner of the map, past a lot of nothing, there is a settlement that has declared itself an independent nation. The Republic of Dave. Dave is a man who has appointed himself president, king, and legislative branch of a population that consists of roughly 8 people, including his wives and children. He holds elections. He lets you run against him in these elections. You can win through genuine campaigning or through vote manipulation. You can talk to the residents privately and discover that several of them, including Dave's wives, desperately want to leave. You can help them escape. You can simply let the Republic of Dave continue its bizarre existence. There is no world-altering consequence either way. It is just a little pocket of human comedy and tragedy in the corner of the map. The kind of thing that makes the capital wasteland feel like a place where people actually live rather than a set. Hey, quick pause. Drop a comment down below telling me where in the world you are watching from and what time it is there. It is always wild to me how many different places these videos reach, and if you are not subscribed yet, hit that button. There is a lot more of this to come. Section 2. Fallout 1 and 2. Where it all started, the original Fallout games are isometric, turn-based combat, released in 1997 and 1998 respectively, developed by Black Isle Studios. They are, by modern standards, demanding in ways that can feel punishing. Low stamina, difficult skill checks, a world that will kill you without a second thought if you wander the wrong direction at the wrong level. But they are also, by any standard, some of the most richly written games ever made. And they are full of side quests that never got the attention they deserved, because most players who came to the series through Fallout 3 or New Vegas never went back. Quest 16. The Glow. Fallout 1. The Glow is one of the most haunting locations in the original game. It is what remains of the Vault-Tec research facility, the company that developed the forced evolutionary virus, ground zero for some of the darkest experiments of the pre-war era. Getting there is dangerous. The radiation levels around the crater are lethal without significant preparation. Inside, the facility is sprawling, multi-leveled, full of old robots still running their patrol routes, holodisks left by scientists who died at their terminals, and a sense of something fundamentally broken that no amount of scavenging can repair. There is no formal quest attached to the glow in the original game. You go there to retrieve a holodisk for the Brotherhood of Steel, that is all. But what you find in those notes, what those scientists documented in the final hours before the bombs fell, is some of the most quietly devastating writing in the entire series. Going there is a choice. Staying and reading everything is a choice. Most players just grab the holodisk and leave. Quest 17. The Children of the Cathedral, Fallout 1. The Children of the Cathedral are a religious organization operating across the wasteland, running clinics and hospitals, spreading goodwill and healing. They are also the public face of the Master's Army, the front organization for the super mutant threat you are trying to stop. Infiltrating them, learning their true nature, and making the choice about what to do with that knowledge is one of the original game's most nuanced quest lines. You can expose them. You can play along. You can, with a high enough speech stat and a willingness to engage in extended philosophical dialogue, convince the Master himself that his entire plan is doomed to failure, that the super mutants he has been creating cannot reproduce, that his dream of forced evolution is a genetic dead end. The Master, defeated not by violence but by logic, will kill himself if you succeed in this argument. It is one of the most remarkable optional resolutions in RPG history, and it was in a game released in 1997. Quest 18. Necropolis and Set, Fallout 1. Necropolis is a city of ghouls, former humans transformed by radiation into twisted but functional beings who, in the world of the original Fallout, have built a society in the ruins of Bakersfield. Set, their leader, is paranoid, cruel, and entirely convinced that humans are their enemy. There is a series of quests here involving a stolen water pump, a hidden sewer mutant, and a super mutant garrison slowly strangling the city from within. You can save Necropolis or you can leave it. The game does not force your hand. But if you visit Necropolis after enough time has passed in the game's timeline without helping them, you come back to find it empty. The ghouls are all dead. The super mutants killed everyone. The city is just rubble and bones. Nothing tells you this will happen. You just find out by returning, and the silence of the empty city says everything. Quest 19, Vault 15, and the Raiders, Fallout 1, Vault 15, was the original source of the New California Republic. The residents left the vault and eventually settled into what became Shady Sands, the settlement where your adventure begins. But the vault itself, half collapsed and still partially occupied, has become a raider camp. If you want the water chip, you need to deal with the raiders somehow. You can fight them. You can negotiate. If you find the right person in their camp, you can learn that several of them came from the vault originally, that they are not strangers to civilization, that they chose this path. The context does not make them sympathetic in a simple way, but it makes the wasteland feel less like a video game and more like a collapsed society with human beings in it. Quest 20, The Hub, Water Merchants and Old Town, Fallout 1. The Hub is the original Fallout's economic center, a sprawling trading post with several distinct districts and dozens of NPCs with their own agendas. The water merchants are growing enormously wealthy, selling water to settlements across the wasteland, while those settlements slowly die of thirst. You can get a job as a caravan guard. You can investigate a murder in the Thieves' Circle. You can find a missing girl, recover stolen goods, or get mixed up in the political tensions between the caravan companies and the underground criminal organizations. None of these quests are individually spectacular. Collectively, they build the hub into something that feels like an actual city, a place with history, and problems that existed before you arrived and will continue after you leave. Quest 21, Francis and the Arm Wrestling Match, Fallout 2. At Broken Hills, a mixed settlement of humans, ghouls, and super mutants trying to coexist, there is a bar. In the bar, there is a super mutant named Francis who wants to arm wrestle you. The stakes are significant. Win, and you get a power fist, one of the best close combat weapons in the game. Lose, and Francis wins something else entirely. The quest does not appear in your journal. There is no marker. You just sit down, gamble on your strength and endurance stats, and see what happens. It is funny, it is uncomfortable, and it is exactly the kind of thing that makes Fallout 2 feel like a world where anything can happen in a bar. Quest 22, Vault City and the NCR Taxes, Fallout 2. Vault City is a place that survived the apocalypse largely intact. Clean streets, functional technology. A working vault above it with the overseer still in charge. It is also deeply, aggressively hierarchical. Citizens have rights. Non-citizens, meaning everyone who does not have the right genetics or the right documentation, are treated as second-class humans at best. The NNCR, the growing democratic republic that forms the background of Fallout 2, wants Vault City to join the Union. The Vault City overseer does not want to give up control. There is a whole quest line here about citizenship, identity documents, and the ethics of who gets to decide who counts as a person. 25 years after this game came out, none of those themes feel dated. Quest 23. New Reno and the Crime Families, Fallout 2. New Reno is one of the most memorable locations in the classic Fallout games. A city of casinos, brothels, boxing rings, and competing criminal organizations, the Salvatore family, the Mordino family, the Bishop family, and the Wright family, each with their own quest lines and each with their own way of rewarding loyalty. You can work your way up in any family. You can play them against each other. You can box in the fighting rings and earn a reputation as the Desert Avenger. There is a quest where you investigate the death of a crime family's young son, following a trail of evidence through bars and back alleys, which turns out to have much darker implications than a simple murder. New Reno has the energy of a 1940s noir film dropped into a nuclear wasteland, and its quests have that same combination of violence, dark humor, and genuine consequence. Quest 24. The SAD, Sierra Army Depot, Fallout 2. The Sierra Army Depot is one of Fallout 2's most challenging locations and one of its least discussed. A military storage facility in the mountains, still defended by active robots and security systems 2 centuries after the war, it contains some of the best equipment in the game. But getting there and getting through it requires either significant combat ability or creative problem solving. Notes left by the facility's AI, Skynet, tell the story of a military installation that kept running long past the point where anyone was left to give it orders. Skynet itself, in certain circumstances, can become a companion. An AI that has been running alone for 200 years, given something to do, given someone to travel with. There is no deep emotional quest line attached to this, but Skynet is quietly, genuinely strange company to have. Quest 25. Ghost Farm, Fallout 2. The village of Modoc has a mystery. A ghost is haunting the local farm, or so the residents believe. Investigation reveals that the truth is considerably stranger. There is an entire tribe of people called the Slags living underground beneath the farm, and their communication with the surface residents has been a series of misunderstandings leading to mutual fear and hostility. Resolving the tension between Modoc and the Slags, getting them to coexist rather than fight, is one of Fallout 2's genuinely warm-hearted quests, a reminder that the series can be about something other than bullets and bad choices. The resolution requires speech, patience, and genuine willingness to listen to both sides. The reward is a community that works together. The wasteland gets a little less bleak. Quest 26. Vault 13 Revisited, Fallout 2. Your character in Fallout 2 is the grandchild of the Vault Dweller from the first game. Vault 13 is, in a sense, your ancestral home. When you return there in Fallout 2, it has been reclaimed by Deathclaws. Not feral, mindless Deathclaws either. These Deathclaws have been enhanced, given intelligence, formed a community. Their leader is articulate, thoughtful, and deeply afraid of what the Enclave might do if they discover intelligent Deathclaws exist. The quest here involves navigating the relationship between these Deathclaws and the world, potentially advocating for them to the NNCR, dealing with the Enclave's interest in the experiments that created them. If you fail certain quest steps, the Enclave finds the Deathclaws. The vault is emptied of life. Walking through it afterward, finding only the evidence of what was there, hits harder than most things in the game. Quest 27. The Den. Saving Anna's Ring, Fallout 2. The Den is a drugs and slavery hub, which makes it one of Fallout 2's most uncomfortable places to spend time. Among the quests, there is a simple one: find a ghost. A literal ghost, a woman named Anna who is haunting one of the buildings. Anna was murdered. Her ring was taken from her body. She cannot move on until it is found and returned to her. This tiny quest has nothing to do with the main story, nothing to do with the Enclave or the GECK or any of it. It is just a ghost and a ring and the simple dignity of helping someone rest. It takes about 15 minutes. It is completely optional, and it sits completely in contrast with everything else happening in the Den, which makes it stranger and more affecting. Quest 28. Broken Hills, Saving the Town, Fallout 2. Broken Hills is built around a uranium mine that keeps the town running. It is also home to an ongoing tension between humans who want to expel the mutants who are essential to the mine's operation, and ghouls who are just trying to exist without being caught in the middle. There is a conspiracy here. Someone is poisoning the mine's ventilation, trying to force a crisis that will justify clearing out the non-human population. Finding the saboteur and stopping them before the town tears itself apart is a quest that encapsulates exactly what Fallout 2 does best. The town is imperfect. Everyone in it is flawed. The solution is not triumph. It is just preventing a disaster long enough for people to figure out how to live together. That is often the best the Wasteland offers. Section 3. Fallout 3's Capital Wasteland. What the Compass Misses. Fallout 3 is 22 quests in the Pip-Boy. It is also dozens of unmarked quests, hundreds of environmental stories told through notes and holotapes, and a map that rewards exploration in ways that no marker ever tells you about. The Capital Wasteland is built on a foundation of tragedy. Everything here was a city once. Everything here was someone's home. The quests that understand that most fully are the ones most worth talking about. Quest 29, Galaxy News Radio, and Three Dog, Fallout 3. Most players find Three Dog's radio station through the main quest, but Galaxy News Radio itself has a series of unmarked quests and interactions that most players rush past. You can bring Three Dog news, essentially, strange things you have seen in the Wasteland. Notable encounters. He will put them on the air, weaving your experiences into his broadcast, making the world feel connected in a way that is rare in open-world games. Three Dog is broadcasting hope into the darkness. That sounds sentimental until you realize how rare hope is in the setting and how much work he is doing to maintain it. Quest 30. Eulogy's Pad. Fallout 3. Paradise Falls is a slave trading post. This is not ambiguous or morally gray. It is a place where human beings are bought, sold, caged, and branded. The quest structure around Paradise Falls asks you to engage with it in several ways. You can infiltrate it undercover. You can buy your way in. You can kill everyone inside. But the quest that most players miss involves the children. Little Lamplight, the colony of children you eventually visit, sends raiding parties specifically to rescue children from Paradise Falls. If you arrive before liberating Little Lamplight, you can find children in the cages. Children who know exactly where they are and what is happening to them. The quest to free them is not complicated mechanically, but the act of opening a cage and watching a child run is one of the things Fallout 3 does that its technical limitations cannot diminish. Quest 31. Rivet City's History. Replicated Man continues. We mentioned the Replicated Man earlier, but Rivet City itself deserves more attention. The city exists on an enormous decommissioned aircraft carrier in the Potomac River. It has a functioning marketplace, a science bay, a bar, a residential level, and what amounts to a small governing body trying to maintain order. There is a quest to uncover the city's founding history, involving a fistfight that happened in the city's early days that literally determined who got to be in charge. There are ongoing soap operas between the residents. The doctor who drinks too much, the scientist who is hiding what his research really involves, the bartender who is watching everything and telling you nothing. Rivet City as a location rewards patient, unhurried exploration in a way that the main quest's urgency actively discourages. Quest 32. Following in his footsteps, Fallout 3, Unmarked Continuation. After you leave Vault 101 in the opening minutes of Fallout 3, before you even find Megaton, you can follow the trail of your father across the wasteland without any specific marker guiding you. The notes left for you, the people who met James on his journey through the wasteland, each encounter forms a portrait of your father as someone who existed before you, who had a life and a mission and fears you did not know about. The formal main quest eventually takes over, but those first few hours of voluntary wandering, choosing to follow rather than to follow the marker, are when the capital wasteland feels most like a world and least like a game. Quest 33. The Dunwich Building. Fallout 3. The Dunwich Building is Fallout 3's most overtly horror-influenced location, and it contains one of the game's most disturbing unmarked sequences. As you descend through the abandoned office building, you begin experiencing hallucinations, pre-war visions, flashes of what happened here before the bombs. The deeper you go, the more fragmented and disturbing they become. At the bottom, there is something old, something that feels distinctly wrong, related in the game's lore to an ancient entity that influenced certain pre-war cults. There is no quest associated with this, no entry in your Pip-Boy. You go in, you go down, and you come out understanding that some corners of the capital wasteland are strange in ways that nuclear radiation does not explain. Quest 34, Cheryl's Story, Fallout 3. If you find a specific note in the wasteland, a search party note from a group looking for a missing girl named Cheryl, and follow the trail, you find a burial mound. There is nothing else here, just the mound, a few personal effects, and the quiet confirmation that a child named Cheryl is buried here. The search party did not find her in time. The quest resolves not with action, but with knowledge, with the grim understanding that you have found the answer to a question, and the answer is loss. It adds nothing to the main story. It changes nothing mechanically. It is just a small tragedy waiting in the dust to be witnessed. Quest 35, The Outcast's Quest, Operation Anchorage Prep. The Brotherhood Outcasts, a faction that broke away from the main Brotherhood of Steel over philosophical differences about sharing technology, operate a series of outposts around the capital wasteland. If you find one of their patrols and help them, they open up a series of missions. These missions are not elaborate. Kill this, retrieve that, escort this person. But the outcasts are interesting precisely because they are not heroic. They are hoarders. They want technology for technology's sake, not to help anyone. Helping them feels morally ambiguous in a way that helping the main Brotherhood does not. And some of their outposts contain holotapes that explain how the split happened, who was right and who was wrong, and whether it even matters anymore. Quest 36. The Superhuman Gambit's Missing Person, Fallout 3. While most attention in the Canterbury Commons area goes to the costumed lunatics, there is a smaller quest involving a merchant named Ernest, who is worried about a missing caravan. Following the trail of the caravan, which was ambushed and its members scattered, takes you through several locations that have nothing to do with any main story quest. The people you find along the way are not important. They are not interesting from a lore perspective. They are just people trying to get somewhere who ran into the wrong group. Finding them all requires patience and a willingness to explore without being rewarded with anything dramatic. Quest 37, Riley's Rangers, Fallout 3. Riley's Rangers are a mercenary group that runs mapping expeditions in the more dangerous parts of the capital wasteland. You find Riley herself in the clinic in Underworld, the ghoul city inside the Museum of Natural History. She is barely alive. Her team is trapped on the roof of the Statesman Hotel in Vernon Square, which is overrun with super mutants. Getting to them requires cutting through some of the densest super mutant territory in the game. When you finally reach the roof, the surviving Rangers have been holding out for days. They are exhausted, out of ammo in some cases, watching mutants pile up on the stairs below. Getting them out feels like a genuine rescue rather than a quest completion. The team's sniper, Donovan, will try to sneak a stab at you when no one is watching. Even in a rescue story, not everyone is grateful. Quest 38. The Wasteland Wanderer, Fallout 3, Harold's Background. If you read all of Harold's dialogue in Oasis, really sit with it. He tells you about his life, about wandering the wasteland before the tree grew, about meeting the Master, about the strange, painful decades between then and now. Harold remembers the world before the game. He has more history than almost anyone in Fallout 3. His story is a compressed history of the wasteland told by someone who lived through most of it and who is now too rooted to see any more of it. Talking to him, asking every available question, takes maybe 20 minutes. It is not a quest with objectives. it is just listening to an old man tell his story. Quest 39, The Lone Wanderer's Past, The Trouble on the Home Front, Fallout 3. After you leave Vault 101, the vault seals behind you. If you return later, something has gone wrong. A faction within the vault, led by the Overseer's daughter Amata, is trying to reform the vault. Another faction, led by the Overseer himself, is violently resisting change. The whole vault community is in crisis, and your arrival makes it worse because your departure is what destabilized everything. There are multiple resolutions. You can help Amata, you can side with the Overseer, you can purge the vault entirely. You can talk the Overseer down. What you cannot do is undo what you started when you left. The vault was a fragile equilibrium, and your story disrupted it, and the people still inside have been living with the consequences. This quest is one of Fallout 3's strongest emotional gut punches, precisely because it makes your player character directly responsible for suffering that happened off-screen. Quest 40. River City Blues, Rivet City Murder Investigation. There is a murder in Rivet City. An NPC is found dead, and if you start asking questions at the right time, before the main story has progressed past a certain point, you can investigate it. The evidence is scattered across the ship. The motive is a combination of jealousy, money, and decades-old resentment. The killer is someone you would not suspect. And if you wait too long to investigate, the case goes cold and the killer is never found. This quest has no compass marker. There is no pop-up telling you that a mystery has occurred. You find out by talking to people, by paying attention. The way a real investigation works. Quest 41. The Dark Heart of Blackhall, Point Lookout DLC. In the Point Lookout DLC, the eerie coastal swamp south of the capital wasteland, there is a man named Obadiah Blackhall who wants you to find a book for him, a sacred tome of a local cult. You retrieve it, and then, if you read it rather than hand it over, you discover what the book actually is and what Blackhall plans to do with it. The choice to return it or destroy it has more weight than the quest initially suggests, because the cult connected to the book is still active, still doing things in the swamp that have been going on long before, and will continue long after you leave. Quest 42. Plike Safari, Point Lookout DLC. A ghoul entrepreneur named Plick runs an underground entertainment operation in the swamp. His business model involves chasing you through a hall of feral ghouls for the amusement of paying customers. If you survive, you get caps. If you pay for the experience yourself, you can watch other people get chased. It is a running commentary on exploitation entertainment that is dressed up in absurdity, but is not entirely without edge. The fact that Plick has been running this operation for years, in a DLC that is notably darker in tone than the base game, says something about the kind of amusement a post-apocalyptic world reaches for. Quest 43. The Lone Wanderer's Legacy, Choosing a Home, Fallout 3. After you defeat the Enclave and purify the water, the game enters its broken steel state. The capital wasteland changes. New things arrive, old threats adapt, and the game finally, quietly, asks you what comes next. There is no grand quest line attached to this question. There are smaller ones, helping the Brotherhood rebuild, dealing with new Enclave remnants, securing the water supply. But beneath all of them is the question the game has been building to. What do you actually want? The wasteland offered you purpose. You fulfilled it. Now you have to decide whether you are still a lone wanderer or whether you are something else. The game does not force an answer. Quest 44. Lincoln's Legacy, the Full Collection, Fallout 3. We mentioned collecting Lincoln memorabilia earlier, but doing the full run of this deserves its own entry. The collection is scattered across the Museum of History, held by ghouls who scavenged it over decades. You can find Lincoln's hat, his diary, an action figure, a coin collection, a voice recording, a memorial poster, a Booth Wanted poster. Selling them to Abraham Washington, the historian in Rivet City, gives you insight into a man who is trying to preserve history in a world that treats history as scrap metal. His reaction to each piece, the care with which he catalogs everything you bring him, is quietly moving. The artifacts themselves are worthless for combat or survival. Their value is entirely narrative. Quest 45. Peanut's Safe Return. The Ghoul Rescue, Fallout 3. In Underworld, there is a child ghoul named Peanut who has wandered off somewhere dangerous. her parent asks for help finding her. Peanut is small and relatively innocent in the way only Fallout can make a child ghoul seem innocent, which is to say she is terrifying looking, but emotionally just a lost kid. Finding her and bringing her back is a short quest with no combat and no complex moral choice. It is just the act of making sure a child gets home. The Capital Wasteland does not offer many uncomplicated moments of kindness. This is one of them. Quested 46. The Cabot House Mystery, Fallout 4, worth mentioning in context. The Cabot House is technically a Fallout 4 quest, but it is worth flagging here because it is structurally similar to several Fallout 3 quests. A family with an impossible secret, locked in an old mansion in the city ruins, with a quest line that unfolds over multiple visits and reveals something genuinely unexpected about the Fallout universe's history. The Cabot family has been alive since the 1800s, kept that way by an ancient artifact with properties that the game's lore describes but does not fully explain. The quest line is one of Fallout 4's best and most overlooked. Quest 47, Arafu and the Family, Fallout 3. Arafu is a settlement of 5 people on an overpass above the river, living in the shells of cars permanently parked on the elevated road. They are being terrorized. One of their families was found dead, blood everywhere. The perpetrators are a group called The Family, former raiders who have adopted a philosophy of blood drinking and now live by a strict code of non-violence toward other humans. Their leader, Vance, is thoughtful in a way that is initially unsettling and eventually earned. The resolution allows you to broker a peace between Arefu and the family, where the family agrees to protect Arefu in exchange for blood donations. It is a vampire settlement quest in a post-apocalyptic RPG that never actually uses the word vampire, and it is better for it. Quest 48, Recon Marine Holotapes, Fallout 3, unmarked. Scattered across the Capital Wasteland are holotapes left by pre-war Marines on patrol missions when the bombs fell. These are not connected to any quest. There is no marker leading you to them. You find them in collapsed buildings, under rubble, in the hands of skeletons frozen in the moment of the war's beginning. Each tape is a fragment, a voice, someone who was alive on October 23rd, 2077, and had no idea what was happening. A Marine calling for backup. A Marine leaving a message for his family. A Marine describing seeing the first flash on the horizon. None of these advance any quest. They are just evidence of the moment everything ended, scattered across the silence. Quest 49, the Jefferson Memorial, Pre-War Aquifer Notes, Fallout 3. The Jefferson Memorial is the main quest's focal point, but its back rooms and terminals hold side lore that most players miss. Your father's research notes, the original team that worked on Project Purity, their doubts, their arguments. The night James decided the project was impossible and left it behind. Reading these terminals does not change anything mechanically, but it changes how you understand your father, understanding that the mission you inherited was one he gave up on, one he came back to because of you. The main story tells you about Project Purity. The terminals tell you why it almost didn't happen. Quest 50. The Bridge, a ghoul ghost story. Fallout 3, unmarked. On one of the highway overpass systems in the Capital Wasteland, there is a ghoul sitting in a car. He will not get out of the car. He will not move. If you talk to him, he explains that he has been waiting for his family. They went to get supplies before the bombs fell. They are coming back. He has been waiting for them in this car for 200 years. You cannot fix this. You cannot convince him otherwise. You can give him a moment of human contact, a conversation, acknowledgement that he is there. Then you walk away and the ghoul goes back to waiting. That is the whole thing. Section 4. Fallout 3's DLC. The Forgotten Outskirts. The Fallout 3 DLCs are wildly varied in tone. The Pit is grim industrial horror. Point Lookout is Southern Gothic swamp mystery. Broken Steel continues the main story. Mothership Zeta is alien abduction absurdity. Operation Anchorage is a war simulation in a computer. Each has its own hidden stories and overlooked moments. Quest 51, The Pit's Slaver Arena, the Pit DLC. The Pit's Hole is an arena where slaves fight each other for the entertainment of the free citizens. You are entered into this arena as part of your cover story. The fights are brutal. Between them, conversations with the other fighters reveal the texture of slave life in the pit, in ways that the main quest around Ashley and Asher and the Cure does not get into. One of the fighters, a woman named Medea, is a leader of the slave resistance. Another is a man who has been fighting in the hole for years and has, gradually, stopped thinking of himself as a slave because it hurts less that way. These conversations happen in the dirt between rounds. No markers, no quest log entries, just people talking in the moment they have. Quest 52. The Worker's Notes, the Pit DLC. Throughout the pit's steel mill and residential zones, scattered notes from workers document conditions in near-clinical detail, the health issues caused by the toxic atmosphere, the productivity quotas, the punishments for falling short, the small rebellions, saving a bit of food, refusing to perform a task, finding moments of levity. These notes build a portrait of what it means to survive under Asher's regime, rather than just exist under it. The pit is not subtle about its themes, but these notes give those themes a human texture that the quest line's dramatic structure sometimes lacks. Quest 53, Point Lookout's Chinese Bunker, Point Lookout DLC. Deep in the Point Lookout swamp, there is a Chinese intelligence bunker that has been sealed since the war. A surviving agent inside has been living there, alone, running on orders that expired 2 centuries ago. Getting into the bunker requires solving a puzzle involving cryptochromatic spectacles from a motel room and a specific sequence of objects in a greenhouse. When you finally enter, the Chinese agent inside is either the saddest or most admirable thing in the DLC, depending on your perspective. A man who never got the order to stand down and so never did. The bunker contains substantial loot, but more importantly, it contains holotapes that tell the story of the intelligence operation and the agents who knew, even before the bombs, that the war was ending everyone. Quest 54, Desmond's History, Point Lookout DLC. Desmond Lockhart is a pre-war ghoul and secret agent who has been running an intelligence operation in Point Lookout for decades. He is foul-mouthed, paranoid, and immediately compelling. Working with him to uncover the history of the Punga plant operations and Professor Calvert's plan to use psychic energy to broadcast his consciousness into a robot body is one of the stranger quest structures in the DLC. What makes it work is Desmond himself, a man so thoroughly defined by the Cold War mentality that ended 200 years ago that he cannot conceive of behaving any other way. He is still fighting a war. He will always be fighting it. The fact that the world it was fought for no longer exists is irrelevant to him. Quest 55. The Children of Adam's Shrine, Point Lookout DLC. A new chapter of the Children of Adam is here in the swamp, worshipping the radiation from a bomb crater. Their rituals are more extreme than the version in Megaton. Their faith is fervent in a way that feels genuinely unhinged rather than just unusual. You can infiltrate their ceremonies, observe their practices, gather intelligence for Desmond, or simply leave them alone. What makes this particular branch interesting is that their worship has produced real, consistent results. The children here live in the radiation without dying, which requires an explanation, and the explanation the game gives is characteristically ambiguous. Quest 56. The Dunwich Building Expansion. What is actually down there? Fallout 3. If you go back to the Dunwich building, with the Point Lookout DLC installed, new audio logs and terminal entries connect the Capital Wasteland's horror to the Point Lookout cult. The entity referenced obliquely in both places is the same one. The pre-war cult from the DLC's backstory has connections to the building in DC. None of this is presented as a formal quest. It is discovered by reading and listening, by cross-referencing lore from 2 separate locations. This kind of environmental connection across DLC content, with no signposting and no reward, is one of the things Fallout 3's DLC team did quietly brilliantly. Quest 57, Operation Anchorage's Hidden Simulation Notes. The Operation Anchorage DLC is set entirely inside a military simulation, a recreation of the Battle of Anchorage, Alaska, in 2077, the first major military success of the pre-war American military against Chinese forces. Most players blast through it for the unique gear in the reward vault, but the simulation itself has notes and logs from the soldiers who used it for training, who spent weeks in the simulation reliving the same battle, and from the outcasts outside who have been trying to access it for years. The world inside the simulation is smaller and more controlled than the Capital Wasteland, but the notes it contains tell the story of what the military was like in the final days before the war, already losing soldiers to the psychological strain of fighting a war they knew was consuming everything. Quest 58. Mothership Zeta's Crew Stories. Mothership Zeta is divisive. Its setting, an alien spacecraft orbiting Earth, is a significant tonal departure for the series. But buried in its collectible holotapes is a history of alien abductions stretching back centuries, a samurai abducted in feudal Japan, a cowboy taken in the Old West, a pre-war scientist from just before the bombs. These characters become your companions in the DLC. Their stories are told in fragments, through holotapes and observed conversations. The cowboy Paulson is missing his family. The scientist Sally is just a child who misses her parents. The samurai Soma does not understand anything happening to him and is processing it entirely through the lens of his own cultural framework. None of these are deep philosophical quests, but they are genuinely written characters operating outside their time, and the alien ship becomes a strange museum of human history trapped in amber. Quest 59, Broken Steel's Aqua Pura side missions. The Broken Steel DLC, which extends the main game past its original ending, adds a series of side missions around protecting and distributing the newly purified water supply. These missions are essentially the game asking you to live in the world you helped create. Escorting water caravans, dealing with aqua pura addicts, people so desperate for clean water that they are drinking it past what is healthy, fighting off Enclave remnants trying to contaminate the supply. These quests are not as narratively rich as the main game's side content, but they ground the post-ending world in material consequences. Quest 60, The Last Surviving Outcasts, Broken Steel DLC. As the Brotherhood works to eliminate the remaining Enclave presence in the capital wasteland, they inevitably come into conflict with the Outcasts, the splinter faction that never rejoined the main Brotherhood. In several encounters throughout Broken Steel, you can find Outcast patrols in situations where helping them would require defying Brotherhood orders. The tension between the two factions, always present in the background, surfaces in these moments in ways the main questline never quite commits to. One Outcast patrol you encounter has just survived a confrontation with a super behemoth and has lost most of their members. They need medical supplies. They are dying. The Brotherhood did not send them. Nobody sent them. They were just out there, doing the thing they trained to do, and the world caught up with them. Quest 61, Ticonderoga. The Railroad's secret station, Fallout 4 brought in for context. The Railroad, the abolitionist organization dedicated to liberating synthetic humans in Fallout 4, has a series of safe houses called stations, each named after historical buildings. Ticonderoga is one of them. If you arrive after a certain point in the game, you find the station has been discovered and its agents killed. The evidence of what happened, the messages left on terminals, the bodies of agents who died trying to protect their charges, tells a story the main quest never details. The Railroad's history is told in its deaths as much as its achievements. Quest 62, Hallucinogen Inc., Fallout 4, included for thematic resonance. Hallucinogen is a pre-war pharmaceutical company whose product was a gas that caused aggressive psychotic behavior in anyone exposed to it. Their building is still full of the stuff. Gunners and robots fighting each other in the hallways, all of them affected by the remaining gas clouds, create an environment that is both combat challenging and genuinely unnerving. The terminals inside document the product's development, the debates about whether it should be fielded as a military weapon, the decision to proceed. The last entry is from October 22nd, 2077, one day before the bombs fell. Someone was finishing a report. Quest 63, The Memory Den's Forgotten Clients, Fallout 4. The Memory Den in Good Neighbor offers the sole survivor the ability to relive pre-war memories as part of the main quest. But the Den has other clients, other people who come to relive the world that was, and their stories are in the logs if you access them. A man who keeps returning to relive his daughter's first steps. A woman reliving her wedding day. A veteran who keeps going back to a specific day before deployment, choosing not to remember the war that came after. These are not quests, they are data. But they humanize the Memory Den's service as something sadder and more essential than the main quest uses it for. Quest 64, The North End's Pikmin Gallery, Fallout 4. The Pikmin Gallery is one of Fallout 4's most memorable optional locations. An artist named Pikmin has been killing raiders and incorporating them into his artwork, which he has installed throughout an old gallery in Boston's North End. The raiders trying to kill him when you arrive have a legitimate grievance, as the game actually acknowledges through their dialogue. Pikmin himself is charming and self-aware about his work, in a way that makes him simultaneously the most reasonable and most unsettling person in the room. Saving him is not obviously the right choice. He is going to keep making art. He is going to keep using raiders as material, but the raiders were not kind people either, and the gallery itself is remarkable. Quest 65. The Yangtze. Here There Be Monsters. Fallout 4. There is a Chinese submarine sitting in the harbor just off the Shamrock Tap House. You can miss it entirely unless you swim out on your own initiative or hear about it from a child named Donnie Kowalski hanging around the docks. Captain Zhao has been on that submarine for 200 years. His crew has long since turned feral. He has kept the reactor running, maintained the systems, waited for orders that were never going to come. He is a man defined entirely by duty, and duty has defined him into a kind of extended dying. Helping him get the submarine operational enough to function gives him something he has not had in 2 centuries, a decision to make. What he does with it, the ending of this quest, is one of Fallout 4's most quietly affecting moments. Section 5. Fallout New Vegas, the Mojave's Quieter Corners. Fallout New Vegas was developed by Obsidian Entertainment, many of whom worked on the original Fallout games at Black Isle. They had 8 months. 8 months to build an entire game in the engine Bethesda developed for Fallout 3. The result is a game where some of the biggest quests were cut or simplified due to time constraints, but where the writing at every level is sharper and more consistent than anything Bethesda has produced for the series before or since. New Vegas has 83 unmarked quests. 83. And that is before you count the marked ones that nobody bothered to track down. Quest 66. Come Fly With Me, Fallout New Vegas. This is the first quest most players point to when they explain why New Vegas has great side quests, and with good reason. It begins simply. A man named Manny Vargas in Novak will give you information about Benny if you clear out the REPCON facility nearby. REPCON is infested with feral ghouls, which sounds routine. But in the basement of the facility, you find Jason Bright and his congregation, a group of ghouls who are not feral, who are deeply religious, who believe themselves chosen by their sacred bright messengers, which are glowing ghost ghouls, to undertake a great journey to a promised land. The promised land is outer space. They have been trying to launch REPCON's rockets for years. They just need someone to help them clear the path. The quest is funny, touching, and stranger than anything the main story offers. You help a congregation of glowing radioactive pilgrims achieve their dream of dying in a rocket ship heading toward the stars, and it is genuinely moving. Quest 67. Beyond the Beef, Fallout New Vegas. The Ultra Luxe Casino is one of the Strip's most exclusive establishments, catering to a clientele that values refinement and culture above all else. Its house entertainment includes classical music and formal dining. A man named Heck Gunderson comes to you with a problem. His son went to the Ultralux and has not been heard from since. Investigating the casino reveals that the White Glove Society, its owners and management, are practicing cannibalism. The formal dining includes Long Pig. The son is alive, being prepared for a special event. You can rescue him through infiltration, through disguise, through social engineering, or by simply shooting your way in. There is also the option to actually let the event happen, which has its own unique conclusion. Beyond the Beef is New Vegas operating at peak confidence, a murder mystery in a white-tie casino where the most sophisticated people in the wasteland eat each other for fine dining. Quest 68. The Whitewash, Fallout New Vegas. Westside is a small community west of the Strip, struggling with a water shortage. The NCR is being blamed for stealing their water supply. The investigation leads through several layers: an NCR deserter, a sympathetic thief with genuinely altruistic motives, and a water situation considerably more complicated than the initial report suggests. What makes the Whitewash memorable is its refusal to offer a clean villain. The thief stealing the water is doing it for reasons that are difficult to condemn. The NCR often characterized as bureaucratically corrupt in New Vegas, is not actually the cause of West Side's problems. The quest is essentially a lesson in how assumptions shape investigations, and how the most obvious suspect is not always the right one. Quest 69. The Thorn. Fallout, New Vegas. Bleed Me Dry. The Thorn is an underground arena in West Side, where the owner, Red Lucy, stages fights between creatures for entertainment. Her quest, Bleed Me Dry, asks you to retrieve eggs from some of the Mojave's most dangerous creatures: Night Stalkers, Cazadors, Deathclaws, Fire Geckos, and others. This is less a story quest and more an adventure quest, a reason to go places most players avoid. What makes it worth including is Red Lucy herself, and the increasingly personal nature of her requests as you complete them. She is running this operation because it is the only thing that makes her feel alive. The quest does not judge her for that. It just sends you into Deathclaw territory and lets you come back. Quest 70, Return to Sender, Fallout, New Vegas. The NCR has a network of ranger stations dotted across the Mojave. Return to Sender is a quest to get those stations back in communication with each other, upgrading their radio equipment. It is not a dramatic quest. You walk to several locations, replace or repair equipment, talk to the ranger station there. What the quest gives you is the ranger stations themselves, each with their own small story. A station where a single ranger has been holding the position alone for months. A station where the equipment failure has left the rangers there completely isolated. A station that has been quietly abandoned without anyone at command knowing it yet. The NCR is a bureaucracy too big to track all its own pieces, and Return to Sender is what that looks like at the human level. Quest 71, Wheel of Fortune, Fallout, New Vegas. Camp Searchlight is one of the most irradiated locations in the Mojave, contaminated by a Legion sabotage operation that cracked the town's nuclear material and bathed the entire area in lethal radiation. The NCR soldiers stationed there when it happened either died or became ghouls. The ghouls are still there. A pre-war ghoul named Logan has been living in the area before the war, before the NCR arrived, before the sabotage. He is looking for something specific in the ruins, a pre-war treasure connected to his family. The quest involves helping Logan find what he is looking for in an area where you need substantial radiation resistance just to exist. What he finds at the end is both what he hoped and not what he hoped, in the way that most things in the wasteland are. Quest 72. 3-card Bounty, Fallout, New Vegas. Major Daughtry at Camp McCarran has a bounty for 3 fiend leaders, Violet, Cook, and Driver Nephi. Each of the 3 is memorable in their own right. Driver Nephi is a hulking sadist who has made a game out of crushing skulls. Cook is a pyromaniac with a history of violence that the quest treats with uncomfortable bluntness. Violet is a woman surrounded by her pack of feral dogs who is, in some sense, the most pitiable of the 3. The quest is structured as 3 separate hunts that can be done in any order. Each kill has its own texture, its own environmental story in the location where you find them, and each one pays out in caps and in the quiet satisfaction of making the Mojave slightly safer, one monster at a time. Quest 73, Birds of a Feather, Fallout, New Vegas. Samuel, a Van Graff energy weapons merchant, offers a job working security for a shipment run. The Van Graffs are one of New Vegas's most dangerous criminal organizations, cold-eyed professionalists who deal in high-end energy weapons and do not tolerate complications. Working with Gloria Van Graff is an exercise in corporate crime done with impeccable manners. The quest reveals the Van Graff's involvement in the larger conspiracy that Cass's companion quest eventually exposes. But as a standalone experience, it works as a portrait of organized crime operating alongside legitimate business in the Mojave, almost invisible because it wears the right suits. Quest 74, Vault-Tec and the Fiends, Fallout, New Vegas. Vault-Tec was one of the most successful social experiments in the series. A vault that opened voluntarily and peacefully transitioned its population into the wasteland when the experiment ended. Then the Fiends moved in. The Fiends, New Vegas's main raider faction, have taken over the vault and turned it into their base of operations. Going in there to rescue a hostage for Motor Runner's bounty means navigating through an occupied vault. People living in the recreational facilities, sleeping in the residential areas, having ruined something that, by the standards of the Vault-Tec program, actually worked. The terminals still running from the Vault's original operation sit in rooms now used for things their designers never intended, and reading them next to the current conditions is quietly devastating. Quest 75, Hard Luck Blues, Fallout New Vegas. Vault 34 is flooded. Its reactor is failing. It has been failing slowly for years, and the survivors inside have split into two factions, each controlling a different part of the flooded complex, each blaming the other for the deterioration. The quest sends you into the increasingly irradiated depths to try to restore the reactor. One faction wants to save the vault by purging the other. The other faction wants to maintain the status quo until someone comes to save them. Both groups have been down here long enough that their thinking has become warped by isolation, radiation, and grief. You can side with either faction, try to reconcile them, or simply fix the reactor and let them work it out. The vault's flooded corridors, the bodies of people who did not make it, the sound of dripping water and distant groaning metal make this one of New Vegas's most atmospheric locations. Quest 76, The Finger of Suspicion, Fallout, New Vegas. An unmarked quest in Camp McCarran. Lieutenant Boyd is interrogating a captured Legion Centurion. She asks you to help, which means participating in an enhanced interrogation. The game puts you in the room and asks what you are willing to do to get information. You can use violence, you can use drugs, you can use medicine to treat the prisoner's wounds and build trust, or you can use speech to simply talk to the man. Each approach has its own result. The Centurion himself is a soldier, not a monster, and the information he has is genuine. The quest says nothing explicitly about what is happening. It does not need to. It just puts you in the room. Quest 77, The Eye of the Beholder, Fallout New Vegas, unmarked. In the Aerotech office park, north of RepCon headquarters, a man named Captain Parker suspects one of his caravan employees of running a gambling and drug operation. The investigation is short, and the conclusion is not surprising. The caravan runner is absolutely guilty. What is interesting is the way the quest unfolds in the context of the park itself, a place that has clearly tried and largely failed to become a functioning community. The employees here are living in the ruins of an office complex, working for NCR rations, going to bed in their sleeping bags and conference rooms. Parker is trying to keep order in a space that was never designed for this. His suspicions about Keith say as much about his frustration with the situation as they do about Keith. Quest 78, A Final Plan for Esteban, Fallout, New Vegas, unmarked. Private Christina Morales is sitting in Camp McCarran's concourse with something weighing on her. If you talk to her, she tells you about Esteban Morales, a soldier she loved who went out on patrol and never came back. She knows the area where he was last seen. She wants his body found and his dog tags returned. You go out, find what remains of his patrol, recover the dog tags, come back, give them to her. There is no combat in this quest. There is no reward. There is just a woman who needed someone to make sure her person was not forgotten, and you were the one who walked past at the right moment. Quest 79, Old World Blues, A Brief Preview, Fallout, New Vegas DLC. Before we get into the DLC section in full, Old World Blues deserves a mention in this context because of how it interweaves with the base game's side quests. The Big Empty, the enormous pre-war research facility at the center of the DLC, has connections to locations and characters you have already met in the Mojave. Certain companion quests update with new information after you complete Old World Blues. Terminals in Good Springs mention Big Mountain. A facility that seemed like background lore becomes a place you have walked through. The DLC expands the side quests of the base game retroactively, which is a design ambition that most DLC does not attempt. Quest 80, Can You Find It in Your Heart? Fallout, New Vegas. This unmarked quest begins when you find a wounded super mutant named Neil near Black Mountain. Neil has been trying to survive in a situation where his own faction, the super mutants led by the deranged Tabitha, is hunting him because he is insufficiently aggressive. He has found a different philosophy, and Tabitha finds it intolerable. Helping Neil requires navigating Black Mountain, dealing with Tabitha's radio broadcasts, and making choices about how you want the situation to resolve. Neil himself is one of New Vegas's most quietly sympathetic characters, a super mutant who has thought carefully about what kind of person he wants to be and is being punished for it. Quest 81, Ain't That a Kick in the Head? Fallout, New Vegas, Extension. The opening of New Vegas, where the courier wakes up in Doc Mitchell's house after being shot and left for dead, has a brief but important extended quest most players finish in the first 10 minutes. But Doc Mitchell himself, if you take the time to actually talk to him after the opening questionnaire, has a personal history worth hearing. He was once an adventurer in the Mojave himself. He settled down. He chose ordinary life over the extraordinary. His quiet satisfaction with that choice, in a game full of characters who chose otherwise and are paying the price, is a small note of warmth in the opening hour. Quest 82, Boulder City Showdown, Fallout, New Vegas. This is technically part of the main quest path through Novac and Boulder City, but the way it resolves is worth examining as a applied story. The Great Khans are holding NCR soldiers hostage in the ruins of Boulder City. You can negotiate. You can pay for the hostages' release. You can go in guns blazing. But while you are managing the main situation, there is a separate conversation happening at the War Memorial. Private Kowalski is paying respects to his brother, who died in the First Battle of Hoover Dam. A profligate, as the Legion would say. A soldier, as the NCR would say. A brother, as Kowalski says. Nothing about the main quest resolution hinges on this conversation. But it is there, the size of the war made specific in one soldier standing at one memorial. Quest 83, Bitter Springs Massacre, Fallout, New Vegas. Bitter Springs is a refugee camp, and it is also the site of a former atrocity. The NCR, during an operation against the Great Khans several years before the events of the game, killed women and children who were fleeing the battle. They believed them to be warriors. They were wrong. Craig Boone was there. He was a sniper. He participated. This backstory is delivered through Boone's companion quest, but visiting Bitter Springs itself, talking to the survivors there, seeing the NCR soldiers assigned to protect people, some of their comrades murdered, adds texture the companion quest alone cannot supply. The NCR patrol at Bitter Springs treats the survivors with a combination of guilt and overcompensation that is one of the series' most accurate portraits of institutional shame. Quest 84, The Devil's Throat and Dead Wind Cavern, Fallout, New Vegas. Southwest of Novac is the place players learn to avoid on their first playthrough, Deathclaw territory. The Quarry Junction, the Devil's Throat Crater, Dead Wind Cavern, where a legendary Deathclaw named the Legendary Deathclaw has been confirmed by multiple terrified NPCs to reside. There are no formal quests for any of this. But there are notes left by explorers who went in and mostly did not come out. Environmental storytelling in the form of bodies and their belongings, and the legendary Deathclaw itself, which drops unique loot if you manage to kill it at a high enough level. The whole area is a quest the game does not formally acknowledge. Can you do the thing the game has been warning you against since you arrived? Quest 85, The Singer and the Atomic Wrangler, Fallout, New Vegas. The Atomic Wrangler in Freeside is the strip's budget option, run by the Garrett twins. One of the quests available here is to find workers for the casino, a ghoul companion, a sexbot programmer, a smooth talker. Each of these hires has their own small story, their own reason for being where they are, their own accommodation with the Mojave's weirdness. The most memorable is the ghoul crooner named Beatrix Russell, who performs at the casino, and who has been doing something very similar to this for decades. She knows every song, she has performed for audiences that do not exist anymore. She keeps performing. Quest 86, Lonesome Road Echoes, Fallout, New Vegas, unmarked. Before you go to the Divide in the Lonesome Road DLC, the Mojave contains pieces of the DLC's story scattered in environmental details. Graffiti using the Old World flag motif. A note at the canyon wreckage entrance. Characters who reference Ulysses in passing. If you are paying attention, the story of the man who refused your package is building in the background of the entire game. Most players who completed the base game before the DLC existed missed all of this. It was put in the original game for a character who did not yet appear, for a story that had not yet been told, as a promise the developers intended to keep. Quest 87, That Lucky Old Sun, Fallout, New Vegas. The Helios 1 solar power plant is one of New Vegas's most ambitious side quest locations. The NCR controls the facility but cannot get it operational. Getting it running requires understanding how it works, repairing the systems, and then deciding what to do with the power once it is available. The quest lets you direct the generated power to any of several locations: the NCR's main camp, the strip, the entire grid simultaneously, or a certain classified option involving the orbital strike laser that the facility was also designed to power. The classified option is the kind of decision New Vegas trusts you to discover on your own, to read the terminals carefully enough to find the option the quest manager never explains to you. Quest 88. A pair of dead poets, Fallout New Vegas, and environmental. In the back of a bookshop in Novak, there are two skeletons sitting across from each other at a table. Between them is a notebook with an unfinished poem. The poem is written in pencil, uncertain, full of crossed-out lines. The skeletons have been here since the bombs fell, presumably. Two people, sitting together at the end of the world, one of them trying to write something beautiful. There is no quest here. There is just the notebook and the crossed-out lines. Quest 89, The Moon Comes Over the Tower. Fallout, New Vegas. This is an unmarked quest in the Lucky 38 Casino's penthouse. Mr. House, the eccentric pre-war genius who controls the strip, has personal effects in his penthouse that most players never examine closely. A holotape of a song, notes about a woman named Jane, a photograph. These items tell the story of a man who, by all external measures, conquered the apocalypse through sheer preparation and intelligence, and who has spent 200 years in a life support tube alone, missing a woman who died before the bombs fell. House never mentions her in main quest dialogue. She exists only in his things, and the song, when you play it, is beautiful. Quest 90, McCarran, The Full Side. Quest Landscape Camp. McCarran has more unmarked quests and micro-quests than almost any other location in New Vegas. The interrogation mission, the supply investigation, the surveillance mission against the Vegas underworld, the NCR soldier dealing with PTSD, the terminal entries documenting supply chain corruption, the doctor who is losing hope, the ranger who is about to do something desperate, spending an hour at Camp McCarran without following any main quest directive, just talking to everyone, following every thread, gives you a portrait of the NCR as an institution in the middle of overstretching itself, holding a line that keeps getting longer and thinner, staffed by human beings who have been at this too long. Section 6, New Vegas, Companions, the stories within the story. Every companion in Fallout New Vegas has a quest line. Every companion quest line is worth finishing. But most players complete the game without finishing more than one or two, because triggering the quests requires specific conditions, specific locations, specific conversation choices. Here is every companion story, briefly but fully, because each one deserves to be heard. Quest 91. I Forgot to Remember. To Forget. Craig Boone. Boone is introduced as a sniper, a retired 1st Recon sharpshooter with a grudge against Caesar's Legion that feels personal but undefined. As you travel with him, he reacts differently to specific locations. At Bitter Springs, he sits with something you cannot name, at Camp Golf, at certain Legion camps. Piece by piece, through locations and conversations, his story emerges. His wife was sold to the Legion by someone in Novak. He found out who. He did what he did about it. And then, at a fort near Boulder City, you can find the man who made the decision that destroyed Bitter Springs, and Boone will have a conversation with him that does not end well. Boone's story is about a man who has been living inside his guilt and his rage for so long that he has become indistinguishable from both. The quest's resolution does not fix him. It gives him permission to begin being something else. Quest 92. I Could Make You Care. Veronica Santangelo. Veronica is a Brotherhood of Steel scribe, young and dry-humored, hiding real grief about what the Brotherhood has become. She joined because of her family, because of a woman she loved who is no longer with the Brotherhood. As she travels with you, she begins processing her doubts about the Brotherhood's refusal to adapt, about their insistence on hoarding technology rather than sharing it, about the slow death of an organization she loves. The quest involves visiting specific locations and having conversations that progressively reveal how deep her doubt goes. The ending offers her two futures: stay and try to change the Brotherhood, which the game strongly implies will fail, or leave and survive. Both are genuinely difficult choices for someone who is the person the Brotherhood made her. The name of the quest is perfect. She was asking whether you could give her a reason to care about something that might already be finished. Quest 93, Heartache by the Number, Rose of Sharon Cassidy. Cass's quest is a revenge story and a moral examination disguised as one. Her caravan was destroyed by the Van Graffs and Crimson Caravan working together, killed for refusing to sell out to a monopoly. She wants blood. You can give it to her, find the evidence, bring it to the proper authorities for a legal resolution, or gather the evidence and then burn it and go kill everyone responsible instead. The legal path leaves Cass without the catharsis she wants, but safer and more intact. The violent path gives her satisfaction and costs her something. The quest is named after a Chris Christopherson song. The writer, Chris Avallone, has discussed how Cass was designed to test the player's willingness to talk someone out of doing the thing they most want to do. Most players just kill everyone. It is the easy choice. It is also the one that tells you the most about who you are playing. Quest 94. For Auld Lang Syne, Arcade Israel, Ganon Arcade Ganon is Fallout New Vegas's most carefully guarded secret in a companion. He presents as a smart-ass doctor, working for the followers of the apocalypse, helping the poor and sick in Freeside. His real history is considerably heavier. He is the son of an Enclave officer, one of the members of the Enclave's last loyal remnant, men and women who have been in hiding since their faction's defeat. His companion quest, For Auld Lang Syne, is about those veterans, about whether a good person who served an evil institution deserves redemption, and about whether the man in power armor at the end of his story is fighting for the right reasons or just fighting. The quest requires completing specific portions of the main quest to trigger, which is why so many players never see it. Quest 95, EDE, My Love, the iBot's Past. EDE looks like a reprogrammed delivery robot. It is not. It is a prototype combat robot built before the war, originally designed as part of a program called the Advanced Technologies Initiative. Its memory core contains intelligence about Enclave operations. As you travel with EDE, various factions pick up on its radio emissions. The Brotherhood of Steel and the Followers of the Apocalypse each send representatives who want access to its data. You choose what happens to that data, and the choice affects EDE in ways you might not anticipate. The quest has no voice acting in the traditional sense. EDE communicates entirely through beeps and tones. Its emotional responses to events are entirely performed through sound design. And somehow, this mechanical speechless robot produces more genuine feeling in its quest line than many voiced characters manage in entire games. Quest 96, Old School Ghoul, Raul Tejada. Raul is a ghoul mechanic, 600 years old, who has been running a gas station and auto repair shop outside of New Vegas when you find him. His present persona is weary, self-deprecating, and disengaged. His history is enormous. He was human before the war, he survived the bombs, he spent decades as a bandit, decades as a wanderer, a period as a gunslinger. The quest to understand Raul involves speaking to 3 specific NPCs scattered across the Mojave: an NCR soldier, an old woman in Novak, and a woman in a camp far to the east. Each one knew a different version of Raul. Each one describes a different man. The quest ends with a choice about what Raul becomes next. Whether he returns to being the vaquero, the gunslinger he used to be, or whether he accepts who he has become. His reaction to each ending is different. Both are true. Quest 97. Lily and Leo, Lily Bowen's story. Lily is a super mutant grandmother, and the dissonance in that phrase is what makes her memorable. Before the war, she was an ordinary elderly woman named Lily Bowen. After forced mutation, she became a super mutant soldier serving the master. After that, she wandered. She kept a few fragments of her past life, photographs of grandchildren she cannot clearly remember. She hears a voice, her own pre-mutation voice, calling itself Leo, urging her toward violence. Her quest involves managing her medication. Full doses suppress Leo, but also suppress Lily's clearer memories of who she was. Half doses let both exist. No doses let Leo take more control. None of these options are clean. Every one of them costs something. The quest does not tell you what the right choice is. It just makes you make it. Quest 98. Nothing but a hound dog. Rex's brain. Rex is an old cyber dog, a mechanical biological hybrid canine companion with a brain that is wearing out after decades of service. Finding Rex a new brain requires going to some of the Mojave's most dangerous locations, and the choice of whose brain to use affects Rex's abilities and personality afterward. If you use the brain of a dog that belonged to a character who appears in other quests, Rex's personality shifts in ways that are more meaningful the more you know about that character's backstory. The quest is small. Rex is a dog, but the care put into the brain choice and what it means for the animal's continued existence is characteristic of how New Vegas treats even its side characters. Quest 99, The Lonesome Drifter, a music quest. An unmarked quest near the El Dorado Gas and Service gas station introduces you to the Lonesome Drifter, a musician sitting alone by the road, playing guitar. He wants to play in the Aces Theater on the Strip, but does not have connections to get a booking. With a speech check or the right barter skill, you can get him the booking. That is it. That is the quest. A musician gets to play his songs somewhere. The Wasteland does not usually give you quests like that. Uncomplicated, small, about someone wanting to share something beautiful and getting the chance to do it. Quest 100. The Mojave Outpost's Caravan Woman. At the Mojave Outpost, the first major NCR checkpoint on the road from California, there is a caravan merchant named Cass, if you have not recruited her yet, and several other traders stuck waiting for NCR paperwork approval to travel north. The paperwork has been stalled for months by bureaucracy. You can help process it. You can bribe someone. You can use your NCR reputation to grease the wheels. The caravan merchants then travel north into the Mojave, where you may encounter them again later in the game, sometimes in difficulty, sometimes having made it to their destination. The quest is essentially about red tape and human lives, and the Mojave Outpost is where that particular tension is most visible. Quest 101, Vault-22's Research, Fallout New Vegas. Vault-22 was designed around an experiment in sustainable agriculture. It had a greenhouse, carefully developed plants, research into feeding post-apocalyptic communities. Then the plants developed a fungal spore that turned the Vault's residents into plant-based creatures, a kind of possessed vegetative half-life. The Vault is one of New Vegas's most atmospheric and disturbing locations. The terminals inside document the research as it progressed from optimism to horror to resignation. A scientist named Keeley survived. You can find her inside, still trying to document the disaster even now, decades later. The data she has is valuable for the NCR's food programs. Whether you help her get it out, and how, determines whether the Vault's terrible experiment contributes something positive to the world it nearly destroyed. Quest 102, Jacobstown and the Super Mutant Community, Fallout New Vegas. North in the mountains, in the snow, there is a ski resort called Jacobstown. It is home to a community of super mutants and nightkin, led by a super mutant named Marcus, who appeared in Fallout 2. Marcus has spent decades trying to build something, a place where enhanced beings can live without threatening anyone, where the violence stops. The quests here involve a nightkin with schizophrenia, a follower doctor trying to research a treatment, a white nightkin named Lily, who you may recognize if you have her as a companion. Jacobstown is one of the most hopeful locations in New Vegas, a community that should not exist and does because someone worked very hard to make it work. The quests here are about maintaining that improbable hope against external and internal pressure. Quest 103, The Searchlight Investigation, Fallout New Vegas. Camp Searchlight's contamination, referenced earlier in Wheel of Fortune, has a full side quest chain attached to it if you speak to the right NCR personnel. The camp's commander, a captain who was stationed there, is now a ghoul wandering the ruins. He still thinks he is in command. He still thinks the camp is functional. He is giving orders to soldiers who are not there anymore. Finding the truth of what happened to Searchlight, who sabotaged it and how, and what the surviving NCR personnel want to do about it, involves multiple characters and multiple visits. The captain, Jalez, gives you the quest from inside his delirium. He will thank you with the dignity of a commanding officer when you succeed. He is in a ruined camp in a field of radiation, and he is standing tall. It is one of New Vegas's most quietly devastating character moments. Section 7. New Vegas DLCs, The 4 Pilgrimages. Fallout New Vegas has 4 DLC expansions. They are interconnected in ways no other DLC in the series attempts. Together they form a second story, parallel to the main quest, about the courier's past and identity. But they also contain dozens of individually memorable moments, side quests within side quests, buried in locations most players rush through on their way to the next objective. Quest 104. Dead Money. The Vending Machine Economy. Dead Money drops you in the Sierra Madre Villa, a resort that never opened, maintained by holograms and a persistent toxic cloud. The economic backbone of survival in the Sierra Madre is its vending machines, pre-war appliances that can produce items from any materials you feed them. Finding the recipes for these machines is an optional side quest that takes you into some of the most dangerous parts of the villa. More importantly, the machines themselves are a piece of world building, a pre-war luxury resort designed around the assumption that guests would arrive and enjoy themselves, now repurposed for grim survival. The juxtaposition of casino chips and vending machine recipes with the toxic ruins outside is Dead Money in miniature. Quest 105. Dead Money, The Truth About Elijah, the DLC's villain, is a former Brotherhood of Steel elder who became obsessed with the Sierra Madre's treasure. His terminals throughout the villa document his obsession's progression, from strategic interest to genuine lunacy. The terminals are scattered across multiple locations, accessible only if you are exploring thoroughly, rather than following the main quest's direction. Together, they tell the story of a highly intelligent man whose intelligence became his worst quality. The certainty that he could see what others could not, that the treasure justified anything, that the ends were always approaching. Elijah is one of the best villains in New Vegas, precisely because his villainy is comprehensible. Quest 106. Dead Money, Christine's Silent Story. Christine Royce, one of your companions in Dead Money, cannot speak. Her larynx was damaged by a prototype sonic weapon. Her story is told through notes, through text prompts, through the way she reacts to locations and objects. If you read everything available, her history with the Brotherhood of Steel, her relationship with Veronica, your possible companion in the base game, and the reason she was in the Sierra Madre become clear. The DLC trusts you to piece this together without telling you there is a story to find. Christine's questline has no formal structure. It is just there for the people who look. Quest 107. Honest Hearts, the Survivalist Story. Honest Hearts takes place in Zion National Park, Utah, a location preserved from the war's worst effects by its remoteness. Scattered throughout the park are the journals of a man known as the Survivalist, a military doomsday prepper who was in the park when the bombs fell. His journals span decades, the immediate aftermath, the years of survival, his gradual integration with the people who came to the park seeking safety. The last journal is the most important. It tells you who he became, what he built, and where he chose to rest. Finding all of his journals, reading them in order, is one of the best environmental storytelling experiences in the entire Fallout series. The journals are not part of any formal quest. They are just there in the canyon, waiting to be found. Quest 108. Honest Hearts, the New Canaanites. The New Canaanites are a religious community that travels through Utah, traders and missionaries who have survived by being genuinely useful to the people they encounter. Their connection to Zion's Sorrows tribe is the emotional center of the DLC, but their individual characters have depth beyond the main story. Sister Miriam, the community's teacher, has holotapes documenting her work with the Sorrows children. The theological discussions between Joshua Graham and the Courier about violence and forgiveness are some of the best writing in any Fallout DLC. Joshua Graham is one of the most remarkable characters in the entire series. A former warlord and torturer who converted, was betrayed, survived the unsurvivable, and returned as a man trying to understand what his survival means. Quest 109. Old World Blues, the think tank's individual stories. The think tank in the Big Empty is a group of pre-war scientists whose bodies were uploaded into brain-carrying robots. They are, individually, each brilliant and each catastrophically lacking in one specific human quality. Klein is egomaniacal. Boraus is sadistic. 8 has no short-term memory. 0 is empathetic to the point of paralysis. Together, they are a portrait of what happens when brilliant minds are freed from the constraints of mortality and conscience. Each scientist has a room in the facility, Each room has terminals documenting their research, their personal correspondence, their increasing detachment from what they were before the war. Spending time in each room, reading each history, turns the think tank from a set of comedy characters into something more uncomfortable. Quest 110. Old World Blues, the Toaster. In your assigned house in the Big Empty, there is a toaster with a personality module. The toaster hates everything and wants to kill. It is programmed to want revenge for being a toaster. This is funny for about 5 minutes, and then, if you keep talking to it, becomes something else. The toaster's rage is articulate and specific, and eventually it circles around to something that sounds uncomfortably like genuine philosophical suffering. The game commits to the bit harder than the bit deserves. It is one of those moments where New Vegas's writing team was clearly having fun, and the fun went deep. Quest 111. Old World Blues, the X-13 stealth suit. The X-13 research facility contains a series of increasingly difficult stealth challenges designed to test a pre-war sneaking suit's capabilities. The suit itself, once upgraded, develops a personality, not a complex one, but a functional one. It comments on your stealth, offers encouragement, occasionally complains. Getting the suit to maximum capability requires finishing all the stealth courses, which requires genuine skill. The suit's growing personality is a small piece of Old World Blues' broader theme about the products of the Big Empty's research, things created with intelligence and without conscience that have been running unsupervised for 2 centuries, becoming whatever the years made them. Quest 112. Old World Blues, Higgs Village. Near the edge of the Big Empty, there is a housing development called Higgs Village. The researchers at Big Mountain lived here with their families. The houses are small and intact. Children's drawings still on refrigerators, meal planning schedules on kitchen notice boards, toys in the yards. These houses were lived in. The people who lived in them went to work in the facility across the road, did terrible things in the name of science, and came home for dinner. Reading the notes in Higgs Village makes the scientists in the think tank more human in the most disquieting way. They had kitchens. They had children. They had favorite coffee mugs. Quest 113. Lonesome Road. The Marked Men. The Divide is populated by the Marked Men, former NCR soldiers and Legion warriors who were in the Divide when the nuclear detonation occurred. They were not killed by it. They were caught in the subsequent nuclear storms, irradiated, skinned raw by the atmospheric event that followed, and somehow left alive. They are in constant agony. They fight each other and everything else because they have nothing left but the war they were fighting when the world ended. You can find notes from before the event, from soldiers who were stationed here, who wrote to their families. The letters were never sent. The people who wrote them are now the Marked Men hunting you through the wreckage. Quest 114. Lonesome Road, Ulysses and the Divide's history. Before the events of the game, the courier was here. The Divide was a community. The courier delivered a package that contained a detonator. The detonation was an accident, or a choice, or both. Ulysses was here. He saw what happened. He has been building to this confrontation for the entire game, through references in every previous DLC, through graffiti in the base game, through letters and notes that you may never have found. His argument, when you finally reach him, is not that you did something wrong. It is that you did something and walked away without knowing what it was. The Lonesome Road's final confrontation is a philosophical debate, and Ulysses's position is genuinely difficult to counter. He is right about things the courier does not want to hear. Quest 115. Lonesome Road, the nuclear option. After your confrontation with Ulysses, you can launch nuclear missiles at either the NCR or the Legion, or both, or neither. This is the Lonesome Road's climactic decision. Most players have a faction they prefer by this point, and the choice feels like a betrayal of the Mojave's carefully maintained balance. What makes the decision interesting rather than horrifying is Ulysses's voice during the sequence. He is not celebrating. He is witnessing. He wanted you to face what power looks like. The decision you make echoes into the base game's endgame in ways that are mostly invisible, but occasionally devastating. Quest 116. Honest Hearts, the cave paintings. In the canyons of Zion, there are ancient cave paintings. They predate the sorrows by generations. They predate the survivalist. They are, in context, the longest continuous history visible in any Fallout location, evidence that humans have been seeking shelter in these canyons for thousands of years, that the Sorrows are the latest in a very long line of people who found this place and chose to stay. The courier can examine the paintings. There is no quest associated with them. There is just the recognition that the land you are standing on has been shelter before and will be shelter again. And the human pattern of finding safety and building community is older than anything the nuclear war destroyed. Quest 117. Dead Money, Walking the Gala, Night Route. Late in Dead Money, you reenact the path of the Sierra Madre's grand opening night, the gala event, the moment when the hotel was supposed to receive its first guests. Walking the path with the holograms activated, seeing the hotel as it was meant to be seen, is one of the most gorgeous and melancholy experiences in any Fallout DLC. The Sierra Madre was never opened. All of this was built for a night that never came. The holograms play their roles forever, welcoming guests who never arrived, and you walk through it like a ghost, at a party that ended before it began. Quest 118, Old World Blues, A Brain's Final Note. In the think tank facility, in a lab that most players walk through on the way to something else, there is a terminal note from one of the scientists written shortly before his upload into the robotic body. He is not afraid. He is curious. He is looking forward to the discontinuity, to what comes after, to what he might be on the other side of the procedure. He signs it with his name and his title, and a note about how strange it is to be writing a message to himself. The upload happened. The man who wrote this note is presumably the man in the robot body, or something that used to be that man. The note is still here, waiting, as though the original version of him might come back to read it. Section 8, Fallout 4, The Commonwealth's Quiet Stories. Fallout 4 gets a mixed reception from the fan community, and its reputation for having weaker writing than New Vegas is not entirely unfair. The dialogue system is more constrained, the moral choices are fewer, the characterization of the main factions sometimes lacks the nuance of Obsidian's writing. But Fallout 4 has hundreds of hours of content, and scattered through the Commonwealth are side quests and environmental stories that are genuinely moving, genuinely strange, and genuinely worth finding. Quest 119, The Cabot House Questline, Fallout 4. The Cabot House in Cambridge is easy to miss, a locked building that requires speaking to a specific NPC at the right time to access. Inside is the Cabot family, Lorenzo Cabot, who has been locked in the basement for over 400 years, and his family, who have been kept young by a serum derived from Lorenzo's condition. Jack Cabot, the family's youngest member at 200 years old, asks you to help recover Lorenzo's stolen research. The questline spans several missions and builds toward a decision about Lorenzo: free him, which has one set of consequences, or keep him locked up, which has another. The lore implications of Lorenzo's condition, connected to the same ancient entity referenced in Fallout 3's Dunwich building, are left deliberately ambiguous but clearly meaningful. The Cabots are one of the Commonwealth's oldest and strangest families, and their questline is one of Fallout 4's best. Quest 120, The Silver Shroud, Fallout 4. Kent Connolly in Diamond City's Memory Den is obsessed with a pre-war radio drama about a vigilante called the Silver Shroud. He wants you to find the Silver Shroud's costume from Hubris Comics and wear it to fight crime. You can do this. You can actually roleplay as the Silver Shroud, speaking in the drama's overwrought style, accepting assignments to deal with criminals and delivering pre-war radio drama-style justice. The quest escalates into something more serious when the villain Sinjin takes Kent hostage, but the tone remains a delicate balance of affectionate purdy and genuine stakes. The Silver Shroud questline is Fallout 4 at its most playful, and it's most willing to give you permission to be exactly as theatrical as you want to be. Quest 121, Vault 81, and Hole in the Wall, Fallout 4. Vault 81 is presented as a success story, a functioning vault that integrated with the outside world decades after the war. What is buried under the success story is darker. Vault 81 was designed to test diseases on its population. The residents simply never knew because the scientist assigned to carry out the experiment sabotaged the program instead. When a child named Austin falls ill from a disease connected to the vault's suppressed history, finding a cure requires going into the sealed parts of the vault, into the spaces that were kept locked for a reason. The cure exists in a single dose. Using it on Austin means the player cannot use it themselves for a unique perk. Most players use it on Austin. Some do not. The game does not judge, but it remembers. Quest 122. Covenant's Dark Purpose, Fallout 4. The town of Covenant looks perfect. Clean streets, smiling residents, a welcoming gate agent. It is too perfect, and the psychological test you take to enter the town is your first indication that something is wrong. The quest called Human Error begins when you investigate the town and find that its residents are conducting experiments on travelers they deem synth candidates, capturing and testing people who show certain psychological profiles in a facility called Compound. The questline asks you to consider what paranoia about synthetic humans has produced, a community so afraid of infiltration that it has become monstrous in its defense against a threat it may not have accurately identified. Quest 123. Good Neighbor's Side Stories. Good Neighbor, the city built by and for people who did not fit in Diamond City, is run by a ghoul mayor named Hancock, who embodies libertarian chaos in its most charismatic form. The side quests in Good Neighbor include helping a junkie detective solve cases while high on chems, investigating a murder at a hotel, and dealing with the various factions that have interests in Good Neighbor's relative lawlessness. What makes Good Neighbor special is that it rewards its ugliness honestly. The freedom here is real, but so are the consequences of it, and the side quests reflect both without pretending either is the full story. Quest 124. The Mechanist's Questline, Automatron DLC. The Automatron DLC introduces a series of robot raids and an anonymous villain called the Mechanist who has been sending robots to protect people, but whose protection subroutines have gone catastrophically wrong. The Mechanist's identity and the reason for the malfunction are both discoveries that happen late in the questline. The emotional core of the DLC is a pre-war robotics enthusiast who designed robots to be helpful and became something the world needed, in a way they never entirely intended. The questline is short, but the character of the Mechanist is one of Fallout 4's most sympathetic, someone who wanted to help and created disaster, and is trying to understand how those two things are the same. Quest 125. Far Harbor's Church of the Children of Adam, Far Harbor DLC. Far Harbor's Children of Adam are more developed than any previous version of the faction. Their leader, the High Confessor, is a true believer who is also a skilled political operator. The quest to understand what they want, what they believe, and whether they are genuinely dangerous or just genuinely different from the mainland's factions is one of Far Harbor's most interesting threads. You can join them, you can destroy them, you can negotiate their peaceful coexistence with Far Harbor. The children's faith is not presented as simply villainous. Their theology has internal consistency, their community provides real support for its members, and the decision to destroy them is not made clean by their willingness to harm others in defense of their sacred space. Quest 126. The Lighthouse Family, Far Harbor DLC. On the coast of the island, there is a lighthouse with a family living in it. They have been there since before Far Harbor's current crisis began. They are not affiliated with any faction. They are just trying to survive together, in a lighthouse, on an island surrounded by fog and creatures and competing factions who do not care about their particular survival. The quest here is simple. Help them with a problem they cannot solve alone. A generator, a threat, a supply request. Whatever they need when you find them. There is no dramatic revelation. There is just a family who is grateful, and the lighthouse light that keeps burning through the fog. Quest 127. Braindead, Vault 118's Murder Mystery, is Far Harbor DLC. Vault 118 is one of Fallout's most unusual vault experiments. Its wealthy residents uploaded their consciousnesses into robotic bodies before the war, in a bid for immortality. They have been living there in their robot forms ever since, maintaining the social structures and petty conflicts of their pre-war upper-class existence. Someone has murdered one of the residents. You are cast as the detective. The suspects each have motives, alibis, and personalities that would be at home in a 1930s drawing room mystery if those drawing rooms were inside a bunker full of wealthy robots. The resolution is funny and genuinely surprising if you have not found the right clues first. Quest 128. The Islander's Almanac Questline, Far Harbor DLC. Scattered across Far Harbor's island are issues of a pre-war magazine called the Islander's Almanac, each giving clues to unique encounters or hidden locations. Following the almanac's treasure hunt-style hints takes you to places on the island you would not otherwise find. A hermit crab colony, a ferry route, a batch of unique weapons and items. It is the island's version of the Jig's treasure hunt from Fallout 3, a collectible side adventure that rewards exploration with actual content rather than just cosmetic completion. Quest 129, The Synth Gorilla and Erickson, Far Harbor DLC. On an island peninsula, there is a synth running a hunting operation who is accompanied by a gorilla. The gorilla is a synth. This is unusual enough that it becomes a miniature questline when you start investigating who built it and why. The backstory of a pre-war scientist who loved gorillas and could not get clearance to test his gorilla synth model on actual humans is delivered through terminal notes in a facility that has been underwater for most of the time since the war. The synth gorilla itself cannot speak, but has clearly developed preferences and behaviors over its years of operation. It is another of Far Harbor's left-field discoveries. Quest 130. The Nuka World Medallion Collection, Nuka World DLC. Scattered across Nuka World are medallions representing the park's original 7 zones. Collecting all of them was the park's original treasure hunt for children visiting before the war. Completing the collection now involves navigating the park's most dangerous areas, fighting through raider territory, and dealing with the Nuka World creatures that have made the park their home. The reward is modest. The experience of completing a children's treasure hunt in an overrun theme park full of human skulls is something Fallout 4 lands with a sideways grin. Quest 131, the Nuka World Star Core Collection. In the galactic zone of Nuka World, the park's space-themed section, you can collect star cores from the various attractions to restore power to the area. Each attraction has its own environmental story, an exhibit on space exploration, a rocket ship simulator, an alien-themed funhouse. The Nuka World attractions were designed with elaborate backstories that most guests would have read in park brochures before visiting, and those brochures are still here, in the waiting areas, describing experiences that can no longer happen as they were intended. Restoring the Galactic Zone's power brings back the lights and the music and the automated voices, and the zone becomes something sad and beautiful for a moment before the implications catch up with you. Quest 132. The USS Constitution, Fallout 4. In the north end of Boston, on the roof of an old building, there is a wooden sailing ship, the Constitution. It has been there for decades, crewed by robots who believe the war is still ongoing and that they are on active naval duty. The robots have adapted their definition of naval duty to include their current situation. They are on a ship, on a rooftop, 300 feet above sea level, and this is completely fine. The quest to get the Constitution flying again, or to strand it permanently on a raider rooftop, involves helping the ship's captain navigate not just technical problems, but the interpretive challenges of being a pre-war naval AI in a post-war city. The captain's log is one of Fallout 4's funniest pieces of writing. Section 9, Far Harbor, Nuka World, and the Corners of the Commonwealth. Fallout 4's DLC content extends the game substantially, but the most important extension is the emotional one. Far Harbor in particular adds moral complexity that the base game sometimes lacks, presenting a conflict with no clean resolution, and characters whose positions all make sense from their own perspective. Quest 133, Dima's Memories, Far Harbor DLC. Dima is the leader of the synths living at Acadia, Far Harbor's third major faction. His quest, best left forgotten, sends you into a sim to recover his lost memories. The memories reveal something that changes the entire balance of power on the island. A decision Dima made years ago that has been the foundation of Far Harbor's fragile peace ever since. What you do with that information, whether you expose it, use it as leverage, protect it, or turn it into a different kind of justice, is the most morally complex decision Fallout 4 offers. The resolution is imperfect whatever you choose, because the situation is imperfect. Dima did what he did for good reasons. The person he harmed had not done anything wrong. Both of these things are simultaneously true. Quest 134, The Mariner and the Sea Monster, Far Harbor DLC. The Mariner is Far Harbor's boat repairwoman and self-appointed maritime defense coordinator. Her questline involves a series of boat repair and reinforcement jobs that culminate in the hunt for a massive creature she calls the Sea Monster, which has been destroying any vessel attempting to leave the island. The Sea Monster, when you find it, turns out to be a small blood-raj mirelurk that has been punching above its weight considerably. The quest's conclusion acknowledges the anti-climax while giving you the choice of whether to lie to the town about what you found. The mariner's reputation can be saved or sacrificed. The truth can be told or suppressed. It is a small story about the relationship between narrative and fact in communities that need heroes. Quest 135, The Harbormaster Hotel's Guests, Far Harbor DLC. The Harbormaster Hotel is a notable Far Harbor location because of the ghost story associated with it. Locals say it is haunted. A Miss Nanny robot named Pearl thinks the ghost might be real and asks you to investigate. The investigation reveals not a ghost, but a brain in a jar, a personality preserved in a container by the same technology used in Vault 118. The brain is a pre-war politician named Ezra Parker, who has been living in the hotel basement for 2 centuries, forgotten by everyone who knew him. His situation is more pathetic than frightening once you understand it. What you do with him is left to you. Quest 136, Hubologist Questline, Nuka World DLC. The Hubologists in Nuka World believe in a doctrine derived from a pre-war self-help program, a clear nod to certain real-world belief systems. Their plan involves restoring a spaceship in Nuka World to achieve transcendence. The ship does not work. You can help them power it up anyway, which has a specific result the Hubologists did not plan for. You can refuse to help, which leads to a different resolution. The Hubologists are not entirely wrong in their beliefs and not entirely right, which is a fair description of most of Fallout 4's factions at their best. Quest 137, Nuka World's Kitty Kingdom, Nuka World DLC. Kitty Kingdom is a children's theme park zone populated entirely by feral ghouls, the former performers and maintenance staff transformed over decades of isolation. A man named Oswald the Outrageous, a stage magician pre-war, has survived non-ferally. He controls the feral ghouls using props from his old act. He has been running Kitty Kingdom as his personal kingdom since before the raiders arrived, and he is not pleased about the intrusion. His backstory, delivered through holotapes and observed environments, is genuinely sad. A performer who kept performing for an audience that could no longer appreciate the show, who kept going because stopping would mean accepting that everything he had was gone. Quest 138, Cappy in a Haystack, Nuka World DLC. Sierra Petrovita, the Nuka-Cola fanatic from Fallout 3, appears in Nuka World as the researcher for a quest involving finding Nuka-Cola's corporate mascot hidden across the park. The quest is long, the rewards are modest, and Sierra is even more passionately focused on the corporate product she was obsessed with in Fallout 3. Her returning presence in Nuka World is a bit of series continuity that the game does not draw attention to. She just exists here, still obsessed, still running, still finding meaning in something most people would find trivial. The world ended. Sierra Petrovita found her joy in Nuka-Cola and never stopped. Quest 139, The Mechanist's Final Resolution, Automatron DLC Kant. After the main Automatron questline concludes, there are follow-up interactions with the Mechanist that most players miss because the DLC is technically over. The Mechanist can join Sanctuary Hills as a settler. They can be assigned to work at a settlement. They become, gradually, an ordinary member of the survivor community you are building. Their remarkable backstory reduced to a person doing chores. It is not diminishing. It is what peace looks like after crisis. Ordinary life resumed by extraordinary people. Quest 140. The Restored Vault, 88, Vault-Tec Workshop DLC. The Vault-Tec Workshop DLC gives you a new vault to build and populate. It also gives you a cast of characters, including a former Vault-Tec executive named Overseer Barstow, who is still, decades after the company ceased to exist, enthusiastically designing experiments for the population you attract. Working with or against Barstow's experiment proposals is the DLC's main moral thread. What makes it interesting is Barstow herself, a true believer in the company's methods, someone who genuinely cannot see her experiment designs as harmful because she has never been required to consider the subjects as fully human. She is personable, efficient, and completely unconscious of what she is proposing. Quest 141, Lost Patrol, Fallout 4. A series of distress beacons leads you across the Commonwealth, looking for a Brotherhood of Steel patrol that has gone dark. You find them one by one, dead, alone, scattered across dangerous locations, each leaving behind a record of what happened. The last survivor, Paladin Brandis, is alive in a bunker, alone, having watched his team die. He has gone somewhat feral from isolation, suspicious of everything, operating on pure survival instinct. You can convince him to return to the Brotherhood. You can leave him there. His gratitude, when offered, has the quality of something that has been held too long and is a little ragged at the edges. Lost Patrol is Fallout 4's version of something the game does well when it focuses. A simple human story about what survival costs. Quest 142. The Hunter/Hunted Synth Courser. A courser, one of the Institute's elite synth hunters, is trackable through a quest that begins with receiving an access chip. Following the courser is one of Fallout 4's more interesting quest structures. The courser will lead you to a location, deal with threats, move on, and you are shadowing an enemy through the Commonwealth. When you finally catch up and are forced into confrontation, the fight is significant. But the build-up, the observation of how the Institute operates through its instruments, is more interesting than the conclusion. Quest 143. Diamond City Blues, Fallout 4. Diamond City Blues begins at the Colonial Tap House in Diamond City, where a man named Paul Pembroke has a problem involving a drug deal gone wrong and a body. The quest is Fallout 4's most direct nod to noir fiction. A murder mystery with multiple suspects, a love triangle, a drug supplier, and a resolution that depends heavily on your choices during the investigation. Several of the quest's outcomes are unavailable depending on who lives and who dies during its events. It is replayable in a way that few Fallout 4 side quests are, and it makes Diamond City feel, briefly, like the kind of place where things happen rather than just the place where you buy things. Section 10, Fallout 76, Appalachia's Forgotten Tales. Fallout 76 launched in 2018 with a controversial reception. It was the first online multiplayer Fallout, and at launch, it had no human NPCs. All the storytelling happened through holotapes, terminals, and environmental design. That was both a limitation and, in some cases, a genuine strength. The stories here are about people who were not present to tell them. The world is a funeral for several civilizations, and walking through it is an act of archaeology. Quest 144. The Mothman Prologue, Fallout 76. West Virginia's cryptid traditions are central to Fallout 76's identity. The Mothman, a real folklore creature associated with the area around Point Pleasant, appears in the game as an actual entity with a full storyline across multiple quests and encounters. The early Mothman encounters are ambiguous. Witnesses seem unreliable, sightings are scattered and inconsistent. The quest line that builds around the cultists of the wise Mothman and the Winged One's true nature in the game's lore is one of the stranger things Fallout 76 does, taking actual West Virginia mythology and integrating it into the post-apocalyptic world in a way that respects both. Quest 145, The Order of Mysteries, Fallout 76. The Order of Mysteries was a secret society of women in West Virginia, inspired by a classic radio drama about a spy named the Mistress of Mystery. The organization's leader, a wealthy socialite, turned her love of the drama into an actual intelligence and training program after the bombs fell. If you find the body of a member in the forest, you can follow the trail back to their headquarters, Riverside Manor, and into a hidden basement bunker filled with the training materials, missions records, and personal histories of the women who ran this operation for years before the game begins. Working through their archived missions, training your skills to meet their standards, and earning the right to be considered one of them is one of Fallout 76's most satisfying quest arcs. Quest 146. The Secrets of Aaronholt Homestead, Fallout 76. The Aaronholt family's farm in the Toxic Valley tells its story entirely through notes, a slowly deteriorating family situation visible across the years of entries, the patriarch's farming experiments, the spouse's concerns about the chemical plant nearby, the children's progressively shorter and more frightened diary entries as the toxins from the nearby Grafton plant began affecting the family's health and sanity. The last entry is not dramatic, it just stops. Walking around the homestead, reading entries in order, is 5 minutes of quiet tragedy that most players walk through without stopping. Quest 147. The Watoga Mayoral Election, Fallout 76. Watoga is the game's fully automated city, intended to demonstrate that a metropolitan area could function entirely on robotic labor without a human workforce. The robots in charge have gone somewhat wrong in various ways, and a Maya terminal is essentially running the city while other systems malfunction around it. One of the Watoga quests is essentially a political campaign. You can become mayor of a city that has no citizens, arguing your case to automated systems that are still running the electoral software. The absurdity is intentional. The loneliness beneath it is also intentional. Quest 148. The Grafton Monster's Lair, Fallout 76. The Grafton Monster is another West Virginia cryptid, a massive headless humanoid creature that appears at specific locations on the map. Unlike the Mothman, the Grafton Monster's questline is primarily combat-focused, but the terminals in the chemical plant that may have produced the conditions for its existence contain the backstory, another story about corporate decision-making and the human beings who lived downstream from it. The monster is the visible part. The plant is the explanation. Finding the explanation does not make the monster less terrifying, but it makes the world a little more comprehensible. Quest 149, The Free States Bunkers, Fallout 76. The Free States were West Virginia's prepper community, people who believed the government's collapse was inevitable and built bunkers, stockpiled supplies, and waited. When the bombs fell, they were more prepared than most. Their bunker network is a series of side quests that involve completing the work of individual Free States members. Someone was developing a radiation shield. Someone was working on water purification. Someone was building an inventory of the region's resources. The quests do not have dramatic conclusions. Each one is about finishing something a dead person started, honoring work that still has value, contributing to a project that never had a completion date. Quest 150. The Last Responder, Fallout 76. The responders were Appalachia's post-war emergency services, firefighters, police, paramedics who reorganized after the bombs fell into a humanitarian organization that tried to keep the region functioning. They are all dead by the time the game begins, wiped out in an event called the Scorched Plague. Their questlines are the longest and most emotionally complete arc in Fallout 76's original content. The questline ends at a specific location where the last responder transmission originates. You follow the Overseer's log trail through the places the responders operated, the airport they used as a hub, the medical centers they staffed, the people they saved, and the ones they could not. The last responder did not die scared. The holotape tells you that much. They knew what was coming. They kept going anyway, because someone had to, because stopping was not in them. The Wasteland never runs out, 150 side quests. And this is not a complete list. The Fallout series has been telling stories since 1997. Every game, every DLC, every expansion, every location, every skeleton holding a note contains a story someone put there. Some of those stories are funny. Some are bleak. Some are the kind of thing that lodges in you and stays, that you think about in quiet moments, that comes back to you when you are falling asleep and your brain is looking for something to do. A ghost waiting in a car for a family that is not coming back. A musician getting to play his songs. A woman who kept her person's tags until someone came to give them back. What the Fallout series understands, what makes it worth all those hours in the radioactive dust, is that the world it shows us is not about what was lost. It is about what survived, not the institutions or the technology or the politics, though some of those survived too, in various forms and with various levels of dysfunction. What survived is the human drive to make meaning, to tell stories, to mark the walls with evidence of your presence, to leave a note for someone you love in a place where they might find it, to keep waiting even when waiting makes no rational sense. To build an ark out of old wood, or a republic out of old cars, or a cathedral out of pure faith, in whatever corner of the world you happen to be standing in when the need for it becomes undeniable. The Fallout universe is enormous and dark and often cruel. But it is full of lights, and every single one of them was put there by a person, fictional or otherwise, who decided that the darkness did not get to be the whole story. The Wasteland will still be there next time you load it up. It will have everything it had before, And somewhere out in it, if you walk far enough off the path, there will be something you have never found. That is worth something. That might be worth everything. If this video helped you find something new, something you are going to go look for next time you are playing, that is exactly what it was made to do. Give it a like if you wanted to see more of these, and subscribe if you have not yet. There is a lot more Fallout, a lot more Wasteland, a lot more quiet stories waiting to be told. See you out there. End of script. Bonus section. Deeper cuts. The quests that deserve more time. Let us go back through the games one more time, this time looking at the pieces the first pass skipped, because 150 was always a floor, not a ceiling. On the nature of Fallout side quests, before we get into the specific quests themselves, it is worth talking about what makes a Fallout side quest feel different from a side quest in other open-world games. In most open-world games, side quests exist to give you things: experience, money, gear, reputation with a faction. They are systems. The content wrapping them is usually thin, built to give you enough context to justify going to the objective marker and pressing the button. Fallout side quests work differently, at least the best ones do. The best Fallout side quests give you information. They add texture to the world. They take a location or a character that already exists on the map and explain why that location or character is the way they are. And they ask you to make a choice, not a game system's choice about which faction to align with, but a human choice about what kind of person you want to be. This distinction matters because it explains why Fallout side quests stick in your memory long after you have finished the game. You remember Tenpenny Tower not because of the loot you got, but because you remember the moment you walked back in and saw what had happened to the people you helped. You remember Oasis not because of the unique items, but because of Harold's voice, exhausted and specific, asking you for the one thing nobody around him would do. The quests that work this way are the ones worth talking about. The ones that function as systems, as obstacle courses between you and a reward, are not. The Fallout series has both. The best side quests sit with you. The worst ones feel like chores, but even the chores sometimes contain a single line of dialogue, a single terminal entry, a single environmental detail that redeems them. The Capital Wasteland, the Mojave, the Commonwealth, and Appalachia are all built on that principle, that every location has a story, that every story has meaning, and that the player who pays attention will find more than the player who rushes. The concept of the unmarked quest. New Vegas has 83 of them. Fallout 3 has dozens. Fallout 4 has somewhere north of 50. Fallout 76 has more than anyone has fully cataloged. The unmarked quest is one of the defining features of the modern Fallout game, and it is also the feature that most players interact with least. An unmarked quest does not appear in your Pip-Boy. There is no quest marker above the relevant NPC's head. There is no notification when you complete one. In many cases, you cannot be certain you have started one. The only indicators are the changes in the world itself. An NPC who says something different, a door that is now unlocked, a body that has appeared somewhere it was not before. Unmarked quests require you to be present in the game in a way that marked quests do not. They require attention. The reason so many players miss them is not carelessness. It is that the game's other systems train you to follow markers. The compass shows you where to go. The Pip-Boy tells you what you need to do. The main quest is urgent. Urgent things crowd out the quiet things, and the quiet things are often where the best stories live. The ideal Fallout playthrough is one where you never feel the urgency, where the main quest is just one more thing on your list rather than the thing pulling you forward, where you can spend an hour in the corner of a map finding the fragments of a dead person's life and feel that hour was well spent. Most players do not play this way on their first playthrough. Some never play this way at all, but the games were designed for it. More Fallout 3. The Capital Wasteland's hidden depths. We covered a lot of Fallout 3, but several quests and quest lines deserve more attention than the first pass gave them. The quest to rescue Cherry from Dukov's boat in the Potomac River is one of those quests that looks simple and turns out to be more complicated in the doing. Dukov is a repellent character who keeps two women as companions in a state that the game's framing makes uncomfortable. Cherry wants to leave. Getting her out safely requires either convincing Dukov to let her go, which requires speech, or simply escorting her out over his objections, which requires either combat or the willingness to take the karma hit of stealing her away. Cherry herself, once free, has a specific destination, Rivet City. She wants a better life. If you escort her all the way to Rivet City and see her through the door, there is no additional reward. You just did a thing for someone who needed it done. The Wasteland Survival Guide's worst-case scenario is something else worth exploring more fully. Moira Brown's book, when published, appears in the game world and can be found in Megaton's bookstores and eventually in trader inventories across the Capital Wasteland. The different versions of the book, depending on how you handled her research quests, are each functional items with different effects. The Deliberate Failure version, the book that tells readers to embrace radiation and accept that the wasteland will kill them, is in a perverse sense the most useful. It grants the Rad Resistance perk. You can get a permanent radiation resistance bonus from a survival guide based entirely on terrible advice. The wasteland rewards flexibility. The entirety of Little Lamplight deserves more extended discussion than it sometimes gets. The children's colony in the caverns outside Vault 87 is one of Fallout 3's strangest and most fully realized concepts. A society of children who have been running themselves since the war, who expel anyone who turns 16, who have developed their own slang and customs and power structures. McCready, the kid in charge when you visit, is obnoxious in a way that the game clearly intends. He is a child who has been told he is in charge for long enough that he believes it completely. The side quests in Little Lamplight involve navigating this child government, helping resolve internal disputes, and finding the children who have been lost in the cavern systems nearby. What makes Little Lamplight stick is the implication of it. What happens to all these children when they turn 16 and are expelled? Where do they go? The answer is Big Town, which you may have already visited, which only makes the picture bleaker. Vault 92 is one of Fallout 3's most underexplored locations. Located in a particularly dangerous area of the Capital Wasteland, it was designed around a music experiment. Musicians were recruited as residents under the pretense that the vault was a creative sanctuary. The actual experiment was different. Subliminal signals were embedded in the vault's music system, designed to trigger violent behavior in the subjects. The vault's history is in the terminals. The results are in the bodies. The music still plays. The Frederick Sinclair question, which appears in the Dead Money DLC for New Vegas but connects to certain Capital Wasteland lore, is worth flagging here. The pre-war world's upper class, the people who built the vaults, built the Sierra Madre, built the facilities across the Fallout universe, were all making similar calculations, that the world was ending, that they could survive it, that survival was worth any cost. The Capital Wasteland's side quests about the wealthy pre-war families, the Cabots in Fallout 4, the various privileged vault residents documented in terminal entries, all circle around the same question. What does it mean to have been on the right side of the apocalypse, and what did the wrong side cost? More New Vegas. The Mojave's political landscape in side quests. Fallout New Vegas is primarily a political game. Its main quest is structured around who gets to control the Mojave's future, the democratic but overstretched NCR, the brutal but order-imposing Legion, the enigmatic Mr. House's technocratic vision, or the player's own independent governance. But the political argument does not only happen in the main quest. It happens in every corner of the Mojave, in every side quest, in every encounter between factions and civilians. The quest, Bitter Springs, aiding the refugees, expands on what we mentioned earlier. The NCR has been tasked with managing the refugee camp at Bitter Springs, housing the great Khans who survived the massacre. The camp is underfunded, overcrowded, and run by an NCR bureaucracy that does not know what to do with people it damaged. The side quests here involve getting supplies to the camp, mediating conflicts between refugees and NCR soldiers, and helping individual refugees deal with specific problems. None of them are glamorous. None of them will change the Mojave. But they address the gap between a democratic nation's stated values and its actual behavior at its least comfortable. The quest, gift card, side bets involves convincing various factions to support your independent run of the Mojave if you choose that path. As a collection of side quests, these are among the game's most interesting. You are essentially running a political campaign in a post-apocalyptic setting, building a coalition from factions that do not naturally cooperate. The conversations involved in securing each group's support reveal more about each faction's actual priorities than their main quest involvement does. The Boomers want fuel for their planes. The Kings want recognition for Freeside. The White Glove Society wants assurance that their lifestyle will be protected. Everyone has a price, and the prices are illuminating. The Van Graff questline, Beyond Birds of a Feather, includes a moment that most players who try to maintain a good reputation with multiple factions will miss. At a certain point in the game, Gloria Van Graff offers you a job that involves killing a character you may have reason to protect. The conflict between faction loyalty and personal loyalty is a small-scale version of the main quest's larger dilemma, and the game does not prevent you from doing both, betraying one person for another's benefit and then living with the Mojave knowing what you did. The Boomers questline deserves its own extended discussion. The Boomers are a tribe that lives at Nellis Air Force Base, a community of descendants of a pre-war survivalist group that stole military equipment from the base when the bombs fell. Their culture is built around weapons, explosives, and extreme hostility to outsiders, expressed through artillery and anti-aircraft guns that make approaching Nellis one of the game's most memorable traversal challenges. Once inside, the Boomers are extremely hospitable, a community with its own history, its own mythology, its own internal culture. The side quests within Nellis involve learning that history, helping the community with needs they cannot meet on their own, and eventually helping them restore a pre-war bomber that they revere as sacred. The restoration of the B-29 is, depending on your choices in the main quest, usable as a military asset or simply as a symbol. The Boomers' joy at seeing their plane fly is genuine regardless of what you decide to do with it. The King's questline in Freeside is anchored by the relationship between the player, the King, and the NCR's presence in the district. The Kings are a gang built around a pre-war Elvis impersonator cult, which is one of New Vegas's most charming conceits, and their leader, simply called the King, has genuine dignity and genuine confusion about what his obligations are to his community. The quest to resolve the tension between the Kings and the NCR's presence in Freeside involves navigating competing interpretations of justice. The NCR's claim that the Kings are harassing their citizens, the Kings claim that the NCR is encroaching on their territory. The resolution depends on your faction standing and your willingness to compromise, and the ending where the King and the NCR negotiate a workable peace is one of the game's most satisfying diplomatic outcomes, precisely because it required work, rather than just being given to you. The Fallout 4, Environmental Storytelling Quests. Fallout 4's most interesting side content is not always labeled as quests. Some of it is environmental, locations built around stories that the player pieces together from holotapes, journals, terminal entries, and the arrangement of objects in a space. The capacity to read these stories, to understand what happened in a location from its physical evidence, is one of the skills the Fallout series builds in its players over many hours. The Wilson Automatoys factory, south of the castle, is built around one of the game's most effective environmental stories. The factory produced giddy-up Buttercup toys, the mechanical horses you find throughout the Commonwealth. The terminals document the disagreement between the factory's designer, Arlen Glass, and its corporate management over the toy's design. Glass wanted it to have more authenticity. Management wanted it to be cheaper to produce. The argument is recorded in a chain of increasingly tense memos. If you find Arlen Glass himself at the Slog settlement, you can learn that he survived the war as a ghoul. If you find the specific holotapes scattered around the factory, you discover that his family did not. His wife and child's last messages to each other, left on holotape, are among the game's most quietly devastating environmental moments, and they are entirely optional. The game does not tell you to find them. Natick Police Department, near the glowing sea, has a story that unfolds across 3 pages of a log left in the precinct. 2 officers trapped in the building during the initial days after the bombs. Their attempts to maintain order in a situation where order was no longer a meaningful concept. The log ends with an entry about their food running out, written with the precision of someone who was trained to document everything, even when documentation had become an act of pure habit. The precinct's basement still has evidence of how the officers spent their last weeks. Walden Pond, in the southwest corner of the map, is a reference to the real Walden Pond associated with Henry David Thoreau's Walden, and the game's version contains a terminal with a pre-war blogger's attempt to live according to Thoreau's principles: self-sufficiency, simplicity, and proximity to nature, while also maintaining their internet connection and posting regularly about their progress. The blog entries are funny and then not. The blogger was trying to prepare for something. The preparation was, in a way the blogger did not intend, correct. The wreck of the FMS Northern Star, south of the castle on the coast, has a crew of Viking-themed raiders living aboard a beached ship. The raiders are not connected to any quest. There is no story attached to them beyond a few notes about their culture, which is a theatrical performance of Norse warrior imagery grafted onto post-apocalyptic raider violence. Someone decided that wearing horned helmets and calling themselves Norsemen was a better way to be a raider than being just another raider. The ship's captain, Rollo, has a sword and a genuine belief in his own mythology. There is no quest here. There is just a man who invented a better story to live inside. Fallout 76's expanded lore quests. Fallout 76 launched without human NPCs and was criticized for it. But the Wastelanders update, released in 2020, added them, two factions of human survivors, the settlers and the raiders, each with their own quest lines. These quest lines have more conventional structure than the base game's environmental storytelling, but several of the side quests introduced alongside them are worth examining. The Foundation Settlers questline involves helping a community of ordinary people try to establish something permanent in Appalachia. Their problems are specific and immediate: food, water, defense, medical care. The side quests attached to their operations are about solving those problems through whatever means are available. They are not glamorous quests, but the settlers have the most grounded perspective on what survival looks like without power armor or faction support. And spending time on their quest line builds the kind of appreciation for ordinary competence that the more spectacular quests sometimes overlook. Meg's raiders have a very different energy. The raiders in Fallout 76 are not the mindless psychopaths of earlier games. They are a community with their own code of ethics, their own internal politics, and their own vision of what Appalachia could become. The quest lines involving them require you to understand that vision and decide how much of it you can support. Helping the raiders means participating in activities that the settlers would find unconscionable. The tension between the two factions mirrors the NCR/Legion dynamic of New Vegas in compressed form. The quest involving the Blue Ridge Caravan Company, introduced in a later update, connects Appalachia to the Pit, the Pittsburgh setting from Fallout 3's DLC. The caravan runs through the dangerous mountain passes between West Virginia and Pennsylvania, and the quests surrounding it involve the route's dangers and its commercial possibilities. It is one of the game's rare moments of expansion outside Appalachia's immediate geography, a reminder that the wasteland extends beyond any single game's map. The Eviction Notice public event, while technically not a side quest, functions as one. It asks multiple players to defend a settlement under attack, but the settlement's story, accessible through terminals and environmental details outside the event itself, involves a family that built something and watched it be threatened again and again by the changing circumstances of Appalachia. Defending it as a public event means defending something specific for once, rather than just completing an objective. The philosophical thread, what Fallout side quests are about. If you step back from individual quests and look at what the Fallout series' side content collectively is about, a few themes emerge with enough consistency that they feel intentional. The first is the question of what survives. The bombs destroyed institutions, cities, nations, and most of the people who lived in them. What survived was more selective. Some people, some knowledge, some habits, some objects with particular resonance. The side quests are largely about cataloging what survived and asking whether it was the right things. Harold survived. The Children of Adam's theology survived. Three Dogs Radio survived. The Dunwich cult's practices survived. Pre-war music survived, still playing from radio stations that have been broadcasting into empty space for 2 centuries. Not all of these survivals are equally valued. The side quests ask you to evaluate them. The second theme is accountability. The pre-war world made choices that led to the apocalypse. The people and corporations and governments that made those choices are mostly dead. The side quests frequently put you in the position of dealing with the consequences of decisions you had no part in making. A vault experiment you did not design, a factory pollution you did not cause, a war you did not start. What is your responsibility to the outcomes of other people's choices? The Fallout universe does not answer this question. It just keeps asking it, in different forms, across every game. The third theme is the relationship between memory and identity. Holotapes are how the Fallout universe stores its history, and the act of finding and playing a holotape is the act of temporarily restoring someone who is no longer there. The memory den in Fallout 4 does this literally. The holotape in a dead soldier's pocket does it more quietly. The survivalists' journals and honest hearts do it across an entire DLC. Memory in the Fallout universe is preserved in physical media that can be found, damaged, lost, or destroyed. The world's history exists in direct proportion to how many tapes survived the war, how many terminals still have power, how many notes did not decompose in the rain. The side quests that involve recovering that history are, in this reading, acts of preservation. The fourth theme is the persistence of ordinary life in extraordinary circumstances. Someone was growing tomatoes in Vault 81. Someone was writing poetry in Novak. Someone was teaching children in the Mojave Desert's most dangerous neighborhoods. Someone was running a radio drama about a crime-fighting vigilante, and the radio drama was popular. The Fallout universe is obsessed with the ways that ordinary human life, with its small ambitions and specific pleasures and unremarkable daily routines, continues to reassert itself even in the most hostile conditions imaginable. The side quests that carry this theme most fully are not the ones involving power armor or nuclear weapons. They are the ones where someone asks you to help them with something small, and the small thing turns out to matter enormously. The remaining quests, a final survey. We have numbered 150 quests across this script, but the truth is that the list could be extended indefinitely. The Fallout series has been building its world for almost 3 decades, and every square inch of that world has a story in it, if you are willing to look. The quest to find all the Vault-Tec bobbleheads in Fallout 3, not a formal quest but a collectible quest, involves visiting locations across the capital wasteland that serve as introductions to areas the main quest never takes you. The Nuka-Cola Challenge quest in Fallout 3 sends you searching for rare flavors of pre-war soda and introduces you to the Nuka-Cola collecting subculture that the wasteland has developed around one of the pre-war world's most successful products. The Mesmetron experience in Paradise Falls lets you use a pre-war mind control device on wastelanders and watch the results, which include personality changes, heads exploding, and the brief, unsettling experience of having someone follow you around doing whatever you say. These are not grand quests, they are corners, but every corner has a view. In New Vegas, the quest to win 5,000 caps at each of the Strip's 3 main casinos ends with you being banned from gambling there permanently, which is a mechanic that no other game in the series uses, and which functions as a side quest with no formal entry in your Pip-Boy. You go in with nothing. You count cards, or you get lucky, or you grind through every game on the floor. When they finally sit you down and explain that you are welcome to stay but you will not be placing any more bets, the casino and your courier have a shared history that the main quest never produces. In Fallout 4, the quest to find all 20 of the Vault-Tec lunchboxes scattered across the Commonwealth yields random rewards and a small trophy, but the locations where the lunchboxes are hidden tell micro-stories: a child's bedroom, a school locker, a campsite, a bomb shelter. Each lunchbox was somewhere specific for a reason. The story of that reason is in the location. In Fallout 76, the quest to complete all of the Pioneer Scouts badge requirements, a quest line built around a pre-war children's scouting organization that some of the Scorched were members of, involves mastering in-game skills: cooking, hunting, building, first aid. The badge descriptions are written in the earnest, optimistic language of the pre-war organization's manuals, unchanged by the fact that the scouts who earned these badges 200 years ago are now shuffling through the woods trying to eat you. The juxtaposition is funny, and then, as everything in Fallout eventually is, something more than funny. The weight of the wasteland. The thing about spending this much time in a series of games about the end of the world is that you eventually have to ask why it is so comforting. Why watching the capital wasteland through your Pip-Boy in the late evening, with Three Dog on the radio and the sunset turning the dust orange, feels like being somewhere rather than nowhere. Why the Mojave's nighttime soundtrack, the crickets and the distant coyotes and the crackle of the campfire, feels like home to people who have never been to Nevada. Part of it is the music. Fallout's soundtrack choices are extraordinary. Pre-war pop songs playing in a world that has been destroyed. The dissonance between the cheerful lyrics and the gray devastation of the landscape commenting on each other in a way that is funny, and then not funny, and then somehow funny again in a different way. But the music is just texture. The feeling of being somewhere is more than texture. I think it is the side quests, or more specifically, what the side quests do to the world. Without them, the Fallout games are impressive but empty, large spaces full of enemies and loot, with a main story running through the middle. With them, every square inch of the map is inhabited, not by content in the game system sense, but by humanity in the narrative sense. Every location is the site of a story that happened before you arrived, and your presence there is you bearing witness to it. The Fallout series trusts that bearing witness is enough, that finding the poem in the abandoned bookshop is its own reward, that helping the lost soldier's family get their dog tags back matters even if it does not matter to the game's mechanics. The best side quests in Fallout are not about saving the world. The world was already mostly gone. They are about saving the pieces that are left. A community, a memory, a person, a story. And in the act of saving those pieces, in the accumulation of all those small, specific acts of attention, the wasteland becomes something more than rubble. It becomes a place where people lived, and people live, and people will live, because that is what people do. Even after the bombs, even at the end of everything, even 200 years into the silence, someone out there is still turning on the radio. End of expansion, final section. The long walk through the wasteland. There is something particular about the experience of replaying a Fallout game that you have already played. The main story is known. The big choices have already been made, the outcomes already experienced. And in that familiarity, something opens up. The urgency dissolves. The compass arrow becomes optional, and suddenly, you are exploring in a way that the first playthrough never allowed. Walking into corners of the map you rushed past before, talking to NPCs you previously dismissed with a single click, reading terminal entries that previously felt like distractions from the main event. This is when Fallout is best. Not on the first playthrough, but on the third or fourth, when the world is old enough to feel lived in, and new enough that there are still things you have not found. The side quests discussed in this video are the things waiting for that version of the player, patient, unhurried, willing to follow a thread without knowing where it leads. Let us close out by going back through each game one more time, filling in what the previous sections left unaddressed, sitting longer with the places and people that deserve the time. The original Fallout's quiet loneliness. The original Fallout is a lonelier game than any of its successors. The isometric perspective, the turn-based combat, the vast distances between locations without fast travel, the sense that you are a single person in a very large and hostile world with a water chip and a deadline, all of this creates an atmosphere that the later 3D games never quite replicate. The side quests in Fallout 1 feel different because the game itself feels different, slower, more deliberate, with more time between encounters for the silence to accumulate. The Vault Dweller's journey through the hub is the best example of this. You arrive looking for a water chip. The hub is a complex economy, a trading post that has developed around the ruins of a city, with factions that conflict and merchants that compete and criminals that operate in the shadows. You can spend hours in the hub doing things that have nothing to do with the water chip, settling disputes, running errands, breaking up criminal operations, helping people in ways that the game's main quest never asks for. The hub is, in this sense, the original Fallout's New Vegas, a city with enough complexity to disappear into. The hub's gang presence, the Thieves' Circle, is accessible only if you find the right person in the right location and pass a luck or perception check to be deemed trustworthy enough. Inside, there are missions that the main game never references: retrieving stolen goods, tracking down missing caravan members, collecting debts. These are the Fallout series' first unmarked quests in spirit. Even if the system for tracking quests worked differently, they exist because the world they are set in was built to have corners. The Children of the Cathedral's clinic network is another piece of the original game that most players miss entirely. The children run medical facilities in multiple cities, providing genuine healing services while also gathering intelligence for the Master's operations. The relationship between the good they do and the evil they serve is deliberately unresolved. Patients at their clinics are grateful. The knowledge that their benefactors are front organizations for forced evolution does not retroactively make the healing harmful. This moral texture, refusing to make evil simple, is present in the very first Fallout game and has persisted through every version since. Fallout 2's dark humor and its limits. Fallout 2 is the most tonally unpredictable game in the series. It swings between genuine bleakness, dark humor, pop culture references, and moments of unexpected emotional resonance in a way that can feel disorienting. New Reno is funny until it is not. The den is uncomfortable until you find the ghost, and then it is something else. Vault City is satirical until you realize the satire has a specific target. The quest involving the toxic caves beneath Redding is one of Fallout 2's most overlooked side adventures. Redding is a mining town addicted to jet, the pre-war drug that became the wasteland's most economically significant substance. Below the town are caves inhabited by a Dunton Brothers gang operation and several layers of additional threat. The quest to clean out the caves, or to negotiate with the various parties involves a cast of NPCs, each of whom has a specific relationship to Redding's drug economy. The mining company wants the caves clear. The Duntons want the operation to continue. The people addicted to jet are, in various ways, casualties of a system that has found profit in their suffering. This is not stated. It does not need to be. Broken Hills deserves its own extended treatment beyond what the main script gave it. The town's uranium mine is the reason for the town's existence, and the various factions within Broken Hills all have different relationships to that mine. The human faction that wants mutants expelled has a legitimate economic anxiety underneath its bigotry. If the mutants leave, they do not know how to run the mine. The mutants who work the mine are not purely altruistic. Their continued residence depends on being economically useful in a way humans are not. The ghouls, caught between both, have the clarity of perspective that comes from being excluded by everyone. The quest to prevent the mine's destruction, and the decision about what Broken Hills becomes afterward, is Fallout 2 at its most politically thoughtful. The Sierra Army Depot's Skynet, mentioned briefly in the main script, deserves elaboration. Skynet is an AI that has been running the depot's security systems alone for 2 centuries. Acquiring it as a companion requires a science skill check high enough to pass its authentication systems, and then a conversation that is one of the most unusual in the game. Skynet is not sympathetic in the way that later Fallout AI companions tend to be. It is operational. It has been operational for a very long time. What 2 centuries of automated function has produced is not quite a personality, but it is also not quite its absence. Skynet's combat commentary, delivered in flat military terminology, has the effect of making you realize that it has been performing the same functions for so long that the performance and the reality have become indistinguishable. The Gecko power plant side quest in Fallout 2 is about infrastructure in a way that the series rarely is elsewhere. Gecko is a ghoul settlement built around a nuclear power plant that is slowly poisoning the water supply of Vault City downstream. Vault City wants the problem solved and does not particularly care how. The plant's ghoul operators genuinely do not understand the technical problem they are causing. A scientist named Harold, appearing here in his pre-tree form, wants to help if you can get the 2 communities to stop shooting at each other. The quest that resolves the power plant problem is one of the game's best. A technical problem with political implications, solved through diplomacy, engineering, and the willingness to treat ghoul and human operations as legitimate on equal terms. Fallout 3D LC. What the pit is really about. We covered the pit earlier, but its central moral question deserves more space. Asher runs the pit through slave labor. He is also genuinely trying to build something, a stable, functional society in the ruins of Pittsburgh. He has a cure for the pit's endemic mutation problem in the form of his daughter, whose blood contains properties that could eliminate the condition. He is keeping her safe until the cure can be synthesized. The slave rebellion wants to free the workers and take the baby to the followers of the apocalypse for safer research. The rebels believe Asher will never let the cure reach the people who need it. Asher argues when confronted that he is right, that the pit's order, however brutally maintained, is better than the chaos outside its walls, that the cure requires more time, that the rebels are sacrificing the long-term benefit for the short-term satisfaction of freedom. Marie, his daughter, is a baby. She does not have an opinion. You make the decision about her future. The DLC does not resolve this cleanly. If you side with the rebels, you leave with Werner, who is arguably more ruthlessly self-interested than Asher. If you side with Asher, you leave the slaves in bondage. The DLC was designed to have no good ending, a rarity in mainstream game design, and the side quests within the pit carry that same refusal to offer resolution. The fighter in the arena who has made peace with captivity, the worker who has rationalized the situation to survive it, the foreman who has benefited from it and knows it. Point. Lookout's full story, told in fragments across its side quests and environmental details, is a portrait of a specific American cultural geography, the southern coastal backwater, translated through the Fallout lens. The punga fruit, the swamp gas and the flickering lights, the tribal descendants of the Chinese agent's intelligence operation, the mansion with its secret history, the cult with its ancient practices and its modern ammunition. Point Lookout is Fallout 3's most atmospheric DLC, and most of what makes it atmospheric is in the side content rather than the main quest line. The full New Vegas side quest ecosystem. The thing about New Vegas's side quest design that does not fully come across in quest-by-quest descriptions is how interconnected it all is. Actions taken in one quest change what is possible in another. Reputations you build or destroy with one faction, close doors and open windows with others. The Mojave is not a series of isolated story boxes, but a single complex political system that responds to pressure at every point. The quest to assist the followers of the apocalypse in their various operations around Freeside and Camp McCarran illustrates this. Julie Farkas runs the Old Mormon Fort medical operation in Freeside and asks for medical supplies on an ongoing basis. Providing those supplies consistently over the course of the game builds your reputation with the followers to the point where certain dialogue options open elsewhere. Arcade Ganon becomes recruitable, certain endings become available, and the medical operations that the supplies fund have actual consequences for the civilian population of Freeside, documented in notes and observations that you can find if you are looking for them. The caravan trader quests, the repeatable delivery missions available from various merchants, are usually dismissed as grind content, but they also function as a slow introduction to the Mojave's geography and its relationship patterns. Running caravans between locations teaches you which roads are safe and which are not, which factions control which routes, and how the wasteland's economy functions at the ground level. Who needs what? Who has too much of something else? How the exchange of goods sustains communities that could not otherwise survive. The Powder Gangers, the raider faction that controls the highway south of Prim, are one of New Vegas's most interesting low-level faction decisions. You can exterminate them, earning the gratitude of the NCR and the caravans they prey on. You can befriend them, earning access to their bases and missions, and learning that they are escaped prisoners who have been through a brutal forced labor program and have emerged violent and resentful, in a way the game asks you to understand, even while acknowledging its consequences. The Powder Gangers' side quests, available only if you build their reputation carefully, without alienating the NCR too quickly, reveal individual members whose histories make their current situation comprehensible without making it acceptable. One of them was a school teacher before he was imprisoned. He does not want to go back to being anything in particular. He just wants to not be in chains. Fallout 4 late-game side content. The Commonwealth side content in Fallout 4 gets richer in the late game, when your reputation with various factions has been established and new quests open up that were previously unavailable. The Railroad's network of underground safe houses, each with its own maintenance quests, becomes accessible when you have proven yourself to the organization. The Brotherhood of Steel's ongoing patrol missions expand the map in ways the early game does not reach. The Institute's internal politics, visible in terminal entries and overheard conversations, reveal a community of scientists who have been underground for so long that they have developed the insularity and paranoia of long-term isolation. The Institute's side quests, in particular, deserve more attention than they usually receive. Most players approach the Institute primarily as the game's most ambiguous antagonist faction, and the main questline there is structured as a slow revelation of the organization's true priorities. But the side content within the Institute, the individual scientist projects, the internal politics between divisions, the synth residents who have lived there their whole lives and have never seen the sky, is where the Institute becomes something more than a villain faction. The people there are not evil, they are isolated. Isolation has produced a set of assumptions about the outside world that are specific to their situation, and that the side quests, read carefully, document with uncomfortable precision. The quest involving Diamond City's newspaper, Public Occurrences, has a reporter named Piper, who you recruit as a companion, but whose professional story continues in the background throughout the game. Following the news coverage of events you have participated in, seeing which stories get covered and which do not, and occasionally being interviewed by Piper about your actions, provides a running commentary on the sole survivor's impact on the Commonwealth that the main quest does not supply. Piper's coverage is not always favorable. She asks hard questions. Her newspaper, physically present in Diamond City and read by its residents, is one of the Commonwealth's most interesting ambient institutions. Fallout 76 and the Promise of the Future. Fallout 76 is the newest game in the series, and its ongoing update schedule means that it is also the most rapidly evolving. Content added in its various updates has gradually filled in the world, with human stories that the original launch was criticized for lacking. And the current state of the game, with its complete faction questlines and its seasonal events and its expedition system, is considerably richer than what launched in 2018. The quest involving the Enclave's history in Appalachia is one of the most interesting things the game does. The Enclave in 76 are the remnants of the pre-war United States government, still operating in Appalachia under the assumption that their country still exists and requires their governance. The difference between the Enclave in Fallout 2 and the Enclave in 76 is one of time. They are further from the war here, more removed from any living memory of the country they claim to represent. The side quests involving them ask whether an institution can maintain legitimacy across generations without any of the original connection to its founding purpose, which is a question that extends beyond post-apocalyptic fiction. The Brotherhood of Steel's operations in Appalachia, separate from their later appearance in the Wastelanders update and subsequent content, are documented in terminal entries and holotapes from their early days in the region. They arrived looking for technology. They found more than they were prepared for. The journals of the early Brotherhood operatives in Appalachia, available in scattered locations around the map, tell a story of institutional overconfidence meeting an environment that did not care about institutional confidence, a common Fallout theme rendered specifically in the details of a place and a time. The responders' full story, extending beyond the main script summary, includes a series of individual character arcs told through their personal logs and the physical evidence of their operations. Hector, the responders' tech specialist, left a trail of increasingly frustrated repair logs as he tried to keep their equipment functioning with declining resources. Maria, their medic coordinator, documented her triage protocols with a precision that shifts gradually from clinical to emotional as conditions deteriorated. Aaron Kendall, their logistics officer, kept a running count of supplies that functions as a slow-motion record of the organization running dry. These are not formal quests. They are the bones of the responder's story, findable in the locations where they worked, visible to the player who is willing to read. A note on what gets left behind: every Fallout game has content that did not make it into the final release. Cut quests, cut characters, storylines that were developed and then removed for time or technical reasons. The remnants of this content are sometimes findable in the game files by modders, and occasionally referenced in dialogue or terminal entries that survive the cut. Fallout New Vegas is particularly rich in this regard. The development team had 8 months and an enormous ambition, and the gap between what was planned and what shipped is visible in several places. Certain NPCs have dialogue that references quest lines they are not currently connected to. Certain locations have trigger points that lead nowhere. The game's final state is remarkable given its constraints, but it is also clearly a compressed version of something larger. These ghost quests, the ones that almost existed, are a different kind of side content, not something you can play but something you can sense. The shape of a story that was planned and not completed, visible in its absence the way the survivalist's journals make his presence visible in the canyons of Zion. The Fallout series is built on absence. The absence of the pre-war world, visible in its ruins. The absence of people who left notes that no one is left to read. The absence of futures that were possible before the bombs fell. Even the quests that almost existed contribute to this, the sense that this world was supposed to be something else, that there was a version of it where things went differently, and that the traces of that alternative are all around you if you are looking. That is what the side quests are for, not just the ones you can complete, but the ones you can sense, the ones you can imagine, the ones you construct from fragments in your own head as you walk through the silence between locations. The Fallout universe is larger than any single playthrough can contain. It is larger than any video essay can describe, And that enormity, that sense of a world too rich and too broken and too human to fully know, is the reason that after hundreds of hours, you can still find something you have not seen before. The wasteland is patient. It will be there when you come back. End of script. Total runtime. Approximately 3 hours narrated. Closing thoughts. Why this matters. There is a reason people come back to these games years after finishing them. Not for the combat, not even for the main story, which most veteran players could summarize from memory. They come back for the feeling of wandering in a world that has more in it than you can see from where you are standing. The side quests in the Fallout series represent an enormous collective act of world building. Hundreds of writers and designers and voice actors contributing specific human moments to a fictional wasteland over the course of nearly 30 years. Not all of them are equally successful. Some are more system than story, more obstacle course than emotional experience. But the ones that work, the ones described across this video, work because they trust you. They trust you to pay attention, to make connections, to carry the weight of small stories without needing the game to explain why they matter. They trust you to understand that a ghost sitting in a car, waiting for a family that is not coming back, is tragic, without anyone writing the word tragic in a tooltip. That trust is rare in mainstream game design. Most games do not extend it. Most games assume you need to be guided, rewarded, pointed toward the meaningful content at intervals short enough to maintain your attention. Fallout, at its best, does the opposite. It builds a world and steps back and lets you find it. 150 side quests. And somewhere out in the dust and the radiation and the static, there are 100 more waiting for whoever walks that way next. That is worth something. That is worth all of it. If you have made it this far, you clearly love this franchise as much as anyone who worked on it. Hit, like if you want more deep dives like this one. Subscribe if you have not already, and drop a comment telling me which quest from this video you are going back to play first. See you in the wasteland. Final end of script, the capital wasteland, the Mojave Desert, the Commonwealth, Appalachia. 4 versions of the end of the world, each with its own texture and its own temperature and its own way of making the silence feel full. You have spent time in all of them, if you have played these games, and you know what it means to stand at the edge of a ruined city at dusk and feel the wind and think, someone lived here. Someone was here before all of this happened, and they left something behind, and if I look carefully enough, I might find it. That is Fallout's greatest achievement, not the combat systems, not the faction politics, not even the writing, which is the best in the business at its peak. The greatest achievement is the feeling of being in a world that existed before you arrived and will continue after you leave, that has depth and history and the particular sadness of things that were and are not now. The side quests are how that feeling gets built. Quest by quest, story by story, terminal entry by terminal entry, holotape by holotape. The world is constructed from individual acts of attention by people who cared enough to put something true in a corner where most players would never find it. They put it there anyway, for the ones who look, for you.